Victoria Hale's eyes rolled back. Her body went limp in the back seat. Jack Dalton's hands were already moving before his mind fully registered what was happening. Yanking the car to the shoulder, throwing open the back door, checking for a pulse he couldn't find. The daughter of New England's wealthiest family was dying in his rideshare vehicle, and he had maybe 90 seconds to do something about it. His fingers found her throat. Nothing. He tilted her head back, checked her airway, and pressed his mouth to hers, breathing life into a stranger while Boston's midnight traffic screamed past them in the dark. That single breath would destroy his quiet life, threaten everything he'd built for his daughter, and force him to choose between the safety of invisibility and the dangerous possibility of being seen. If you want to see how far a single moment of courage can ripple across two broken lives, stay with me until the end. And hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. Jack Dalton had learned to make himself invisible. It was a skill he'd perfected over the past 4 years, ever since the funeral, ever since he'd packed up their lives in Chicago and moved to Boston with a 6-year-old daughter who asked too many questions about heaven and a grief so heavy it felt like wearing stones. He drove for RideLink now, 12-hour shifts, mostly nights, picking up strangers who treated him like part of the upholstery. He preferred it that way. The less they saw him, the less they asked, the less he had to explain about the before and the after. Tonight was a Tuesday in late September, the kind of evening when the city smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet and the streets glowed orange under the old street lamps. Jack had dropped off a couple at the theater district and was heading back toward the financial center when the app pinged. Pick up at the Grandmont Hotel. 5-star passenger rating. Destination, Beacon Hill. He pulled up to the circular drive where a doorman in a burgundy coat stood beneath an awning that cost more than Jack's annual income. The passenger emerged from the golden light of the lobby, and Jack's first thought was that she looked tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from a long day, the kind that lives in the bones. Victoria Hale was 36, though the society pages always listed her as ageless. She wore a black evening gown that probably had a designer name Jack wouldn't recognize and carried herself with the particular stillness of someone who'd spent a lifetime being photographed. Her dark hair was pulled back in a style that looked effortless and probably wasn't. Diamond earrings caught the light. She slid into the back seat without looking at him. "Good evening," Jack said, checking the app. "Beacon Hill?" "Yes." Her voice was polite but distant. "Lewisburg Square." Of course, the most expensive address in Boston. Jack pulled into traffic. The city rolled past the windows. Late diners spilling out of restaurants, students clustered on corners. The perpetual construction that made navigation a nightly puzzle. He'd learned every shortcut, every back street, every way to shave 3 minutes off a route. It was the kind of knowledge that accumulated when you drove the same streets 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. "You can take Storrow Drive," Victoria said from the back seat, her gaze fixed on her phone. "Charles Street is actually faster this time of night," Jack replied. "Less traffic." She glanced up, seeming to notice him for the first time. "You're sure?" "Yes, ma'am." Something flickered across her face, surprise maybe that he'd contradicted her, but she nodded and returned to her phone. Jack took Charles Street. They passed the public garden, its iron gates locked for the night. The swan boats pulled up on shore like sleeping birds. The common stretched dark and vast to their left. Victoria's reflection in the rear-view mirror showed her rubbing her temple, her jaw tight. "Long night?" Jack asked. He usually didn't make conversation, but something about her exhaustion felt familiar. "Charity gala," she said. 300 people paying $1,000 a plate to congratulate themselves on caring. Jack felt a small smile tug at his mouth. "Sounds meaningful." "It's theater." She set her phone down. "We raised $200,000 for the Children's Hospital, which sounds impressive until you realize my family could write that check from petty cash. But we need the spectacle, the speeches, the photographs." She paused. "I'm sorry. You didn't ask for a lecture on the moral bankruptcy of philanthropy." "I don't mind," Jack said. And he didn't. There was something honest in her cynicism, something that cut through the usual passenger small talk. "What do you do when you're not driving?" Victoria asked. The question caught him off guard. In 4 years, maybe 3 passengers had asked him anything personal. "This is what I do." "Just this?" "It's enough." He merged onto Mount Vernon Street, the brick sidewalks narrowing. I have a daughter, 10 years old. This job lets me be home when she needs me. Victoria was quiet for a moment. That's good. That you prioritize her. There was something in her voice, not pity exactly, but a kind of recognition. Before Jack could respond, Victoria drew in a sharp breath. Her hand went to her throat. Are you all right? Jack glanced in the mirror. She coughed. I'm fine, just another cough. Harder. Something from dinner, I think. Her breathing had changed, coming faster, shallower. Jack's attention sharpened. What did you eat? I don't know. Crab cakes? Shrimp? Her voice was tight now, strained. Why does it matter? Are you allergic to shellfish? No, I've never... She stopped. Her hand clutched at her chest. I can't breathe properly. Jack's heart kicked hard against his ribs. He'd seen this before years ago in another life. Do you have an EpiPen? No, I told you, I'm not... Her words dissolved into coughing. In the mirror, her face had gone pale, her lips taking on a bluish tinge. Anaphylaxis. Severe allergic reaction. He had minutes at most. Jack yanked the wheel right, pulling onto a side street and slamming the car into park. He was out of the driver's seat and pulling open the back door before the engine stopped running. Victoria had slumped sideways, her breathing coming in horrible wheezing gasps. Victoria, can you hear me? Jack pulled her upright, checking her pulse. Fast, thready. Her airway was closing. Her eyes found his, wide with fear. She tried to speak, but no words came out. I'm calling 911, Jack said, already pulling out his phone. Stay with me. The operator answered on the second ring. Jack rattled off their location, the symptoms, the timeline, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. 8 years as an EMT in Chicago had taught him how to think clearly in crisis, how to prioritize, how to act. Ambulance is on the way, the operator said. ETA 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Victoria didn't have 7 minutes. Her breathing had become a terrible rattling sound. Her eyes were starting to roll back. Victoria! Jack gripped her shoulders. Look at me. Stay with me. But her body was going limp, her head lolling forward. Her chest had stopped moving. She wasn't breathing. Time seemed to slow and sharpen. Jack's training took over, his hands moving with a certainty his mind hadn't quite caught up to. He pulled Victoria out of the back seat, laying her flat on the sidewalk under the streetlight. Checked her airway, blocked, swelling. Tilted her head back, checked for a pulse. Still there, barely. He positioned his hands on her chest and began compressions. 30 of them, hard and fast, counting under his breath. The sidewalk was cold beneath his knees. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, but they were too far away, too slow. After 30 compressions, Jack pinched Victoria's nose, tilted her head back, and breathed into her mouth. 2 breaths, watching her chest rise and fall. Then back to compressions. The world had narrowed to this: the rhythm of the compressions, the mechanics of breathing, the desperate mathematics of keeping someone alive. He'd done this before, in the back of ambulances, in hospital emergency rooms, in the chaotic aftermath of accidents. But never like this. Never alone on a dark Boston street with a woman who'd been a stranger 15 minutes ago. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Come on, Jack muttered. Come on, Victoria, stay with me. Her lips were blue, her skin was cold. But there was still a pulse, and where there was a pulse, there was a chance. The sirens were getting closer. Jack kept going. His shoulders burned, sweat dripped down his face. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. He'd been doing this for 3 minutes, maybe 4. It felt like hours. And then, a gasp. Faint, but real. Victoria's chest hitched, her eyes fluttered. Another gasp, stronger this time, her body pulling air into her lungs in desperate rattling gulps. That's it, Jack said, his voice hoarse. That's it, breathe. Just breathe. An ambulance rounded the corner, lights flashing, sirens splitting the night. Paramedics spilled out before it had fully stopped. Jack moved aside, letting them work, his hands shaking now that the crisis had passed. They intubated her, started an IV, loaded her onto a stretcher with swift, practiced efficiency. One of the paramedics, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, paused beside Jack. "You did good," she said. "Real good. You saved her life." Then they were gone, the ambulance screaming away into the night, leaving Jack alone on the sidewalk beside his still-running car. He stood there for a long moment, his heart hammering, his shirt soaked with sweat. His phone buzzed, the RideLink app, asking him to rate his experience with the passenger. Jack started laughing. He couldn't help it. The absurdity of it, the whole impossible night, hit him all at once. He laughed until his chest hurt, until the laughter turned into something else, something that felt too much like crying. Then he got back in his car and drove home. The apartment was dark when Jack let himself in at 2 in the morning. He moved quietly through the living room, past Lily's drawings taped to the walls, gardens full of improbable flowers, houses with crooked chimneys, a family of 3 that had become a family of 2. He checked on her like he did every night, standing in her doorway and watching her sleep, her dark curls spread across the pillow, one arm flung over her stuffed rabbit. She was safe. She was whole. Nothing else mattered. Jack took a shower, standing under water hot enough to hurt, trying to wash away the night. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Victoria's face, the terror in her eyes, the blue tinge to her lips, the awful stillness when her breathing stopped. He saw his own hands on her chest, felt his breath entering her lungs. He'd saved her life. The thought was surreal. In his old life, he'd saved people all the time. It had been his job, his purpose, the thing that gave his days meaning. But that was before Emily died, before he learned that all the training in the world couldn't help you when it mattered most. When your wife collapsed in your kitchen from an aneurysm and was gone before the ambulance arrived. When your daughter watched you try and fail to bring her mother back. After that, Jack had walked away from emergency medicine. He couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't make life or death decisions, couldn't be responsible for other people's survival. He drove for RideLink because it was simple, because it was safe, because failure meant a bad rating, not a body bag. But tonight, his hands had remembered what his heart had tried to forget. Jack turned off the water, got dressed, lay down in bed and stared at the ceiling until his alarm went off at 7. Lily appeared in the kitchen at 7:30, still in her pajamas, rabbit tucked under one arm. "Morning, Daddy." "Morning, Bug." Jack set a bowl of cereal in front of her. "Sleep okay?" She climbed into her chair, considering him with the serious expression that always made her look older than 10. "You look tired." "Long night, but I'm fine." Mom used to say that. Lily stirred her cereal without eating. When she was tired but pretended she wasn't. Jack's chest tightened. 4 years. And Lily still talked about Emily in present tense sometimes, as if she might walk through the door at any moment. The grief counselor said it was normal, that children processed loss differently, that Jack should let Lily set the pace. "Your mom was smarter than me," Jack said. "She knew when to rest. You should rest too." "I will, after I drop you at school." They ate breakfast in comfortable silence. Lily told him about a book she was reading, something about a girl who discovered she could talk to animals. Jack listened, asking questions, letting her voice fill the spaces in his head where the night still lingered. At 8:15, they walked the 3 blocks to Lily's school. It was a public elementary school in a neighborhood that was trying hard to gentrify, caught between coffee shops and check-cashing places, murals and graffiti. Jack couldn't afford private school, but Lily was thriving here. She had friends, a teacher who actually seemed to care. That was enough. "Have a good day, Bug," Jack said, hugging her goodbye at the gate. "You too, Daddy." Lily squeezed him tight, then ran off to join a cluster of girls near the playground. Jack watched until she disappeared inside, the same way he did every morning. Then he walked home, climbed back into bed, and managed 3 hours of dreamless sleep before his phone woke him. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Hello? Is this Jack Dalton?" A woman's voice, professional and crisp. "Yes? Who's this?" "My name is Margaret Chen. I'm calling from Massachusetts General Hospital on behalf of Victoria Hale. Ms. Hale asked me to contact you. She'd very much like to speak with you, if you're willing." Jack sat up. "Is she all right?" She's recovering well, thanks to your quick actions. Would you be available to visit the hospital this afternoon? Ms. Hale is in a private suite. I can arrange access. Jack's first instinct was to say no. He'd done what anyone would have done. There was no need for thanks, no reason to see her again. He wanted to go back to being invisible. But something in him, maybe the part that had kept breathing life into her lungs last night, said yes. I can be there at 2, he heard himself say. Perfect. I'll leave your name at the front desk, 5th floor, suite 512. After she hung up, Jack sat on the edge of his bed, wondering what he'd just agreed to. Massachusetts General Hospital rose white and imposing in the afternoon sun. Jack had been here before, had brought patients here in his EMT days, back when he wore a uniform and carried the weight of other people's emergencies. Walking through the lobby now felt like stepping into a past life. The 5th floor was quiet, carpeted, the kind of place where even serious illness came with a certain level of comfort. Suite 512 had a door that looked like it belonged in a hotel. Jack knocked. Come in, Victoria's voice called. She was sitting up in bed, still pale but alive, breathing on her own. An IV ran to her left arm. Monitors beeped softly. She looked smaller here, more fragile, stripped of the evening gown and the careful composure. Mr. Dalton, she said, and smiled. Thank you for coming. How are you feeling? Jack stayed near the door, uncertain. Like I've been hit by a truck, but alive, which is apparently more than I had any right to expect. She gestured to a chair beside the bed. Please sit. I promise I won't code again. Jack sat. The doctors figure out what caused it? Severe allergic reaction to prawns and the crab cakes. I've eaten shellfish my whole life, never had a problem. Apparently allergies can develop suddenly in adults. Lucky me. She paused. They told me you performed CPR, that you kept me breathing until the ambulance arrived. I did what I could. The paramedics said if you'd waited even another minute, I would have suffered brain damage, possibly died. Victoria's eyes were steady on his. You saved my life, Mr. Dalton. That's not a small thing. Jack looked down at his hands. They'd held her life in them last night. I'm glad you're okay. Margaret told me you have a daughter, that you drive to support her. That's right. But you're trained. Medical training. The way you responded, that wasn't amateur first aid. Jack hesitated. He never talked about his past. But Victoria was watching him with genuine curiosity, not the polite interest strangers use to fill silence. I was an EMT, he said finally, in Chicago, for 8 years. Why did you stop? The question was quiet, but it landed like a stone in still water. Jack could have deflected, should have. But something about sitting in this hospital room, about the strange intimacy of having breathed life into this woman, made him want to tell the truth. My wife died 4 years ago, he said. Brain aneurysm. Happened at home. I tried to save her. He paused. I failed. Victoria's expression shifted. Not to pity, which Jack couldn't stand, but to something deeper. Understanding, maybe. I'm so sorry. After that, I couldn't do the work anymore. Every call felt like reliving it. So I moved to Boston with my daughter and found something simpler. He met her eyes. Until last night. Last night you were remarkable, Victoria said. You didn't hesitate. You just acted. Training takes over. It's more than training. She shifted in the bed, wincing slightly. I've known a lot of people who would have panicked, who would have called 911 and hoped for the best. You didn't just call for help. You became the help. She paused. Your daughter is lucky to have you. Something in Jack's chest tightened. He wasn't used to being seen like this, as competent, capable, someone who saved people instead of failing them. It felt dangerous and necessary all at once. I should go, he said, standing. Let you rest. Wait. Victoria reached for something on the bedside table, a business card. This has my personal number. I'd like to stay in touch, if you're comfortable with that, and I'd like to do something to thank you properly. A reward, or I don't want money, Jack said quickly. Then what do you want? The question hung in the air. What did he want? To keep his daughter safe, to make it through each day without the past swallowing him whole, to be invisible again. But looking at Victoria, this woman who'd been dead in his arms and was now alive, breathing, asking him what he wanted, Jack realized he didn't have an answer. "Nothing," he said finally. "I'm just glad you're all right." He left before she could respond, walking quickly through the carpeted hallways and back out into the afternoon sun. His hands were shaking again. He shoved them in his pockets and headed for the subway. That night, driving his usual shift, Jack couldn't stop thinking about Victoria's question. "What do you want?" He picked up passengers and dropped them off, navigating the city's veins, listening to fragments of other people's lives. A couple arguing about wedding venues, college students debating philosophy, a businessman on a conference call, his voice sharp with stress. Jack drove and thought about wanting. He'd stopped wanting things after Emily died. Wanting felt like a betrayal, like moving forward meant leaving her behind. So he'd narrowed his life to the essentials: food, shelter, Lily's safety, and the kind of exhaustion that let him sleep without dreams. But tonight, something had shifted. His hands remembered saving Victoria. His lungs remembered breathing air into hers. His heart remembered what it felt like to fight death and win. Maybe that was dangerous. Maybe it was a door he should keep closed. But driving through Boston at midnight, the city glowing around him, Jack felt something he hadn't felt in 4 years. He felt awake. 3 days passed. Jack worked his shifts, picked up Lily from school, made dinner, helped with homework, read bedtime stories. The routine was comforting, familiar, safe. He didn't hear from Victoria. He told himself he was relieved. On the 4th day, his phone rang during Lily's soccer practice. Unknown number again. "Mr. Dalton?" It wasn't Margaret Chen this time. It was Victoria herself. "I hope I'm not bothering you." "No, it's fine. I'm just watching my daughter's practice." "How is she?" "She just scored a goal." Jack smiled as Lily pumped her fist, her teammates mobbing her in celebration. "She's good." "I'm glad." A pause. "I'm calling because I'd like to invite you and your daughter to something. Nothing formal, just a thank you. The Botanical Gardens are doing a special exhibition this weekend. Rare orchids, I think. I thought Lily might enjoy it." Jack's first instinct was to refuse, to keep the boundaries clear, keep his life separate. But he thought about Lily, who loved flowers, who drew them constantly, who'd been asking to visit the Botanical Gardens for months. He couldn't afford the admission on his own. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Completely. Saturday afternoon. If you're free, I'll arrange everything." Jack watched Lily run down the field, her face flushed with joy. "Okay," he said. "We'd like that." "Wonderful. I'll text you the details." After she hung up, Jack sat on the bleachers and wondered what he'd just agreed to. The other parents around him were focused on the game, cheering their kids, normal people living normal lives. Jack had been trying so hard to be normal, to blend in, to be invisible. But Victoria Hale saw him, and maybe, just maybe, he was tired of hiding. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear, the kind of October day that made Boston look like a postcard. Jack helped Lily pick out her favorite dress, blue with yellow flowers, and they took the train to the Botanical Gardens. Victoria was waiting at the entrance, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair down. She looked younger like this, more relaxed. "You must be Lily," Victoria said, crouching down to Lily's level. "I've heard a lot about you." Lily, suddenly shy, pressed against Jack's leg. "Hi. I love your dress. Are those sunflowers?" Lily nodded. "They're my favorite." "Mine too." Victoria smiled, then stood. "Should we go see some orchids?" The gardens were magnificent. They wandered through glass conservatories filled with plants from around the world. Palms that touched the ceiling, ferns that created green caves, flowers in colors that didn't seem real. Victoria knew the names of many of them, telling Lily stories about where they came from, how they grew, the insects that pollinated them. Jack watched his daughter's face light up with wonder, and something in his chest eased. This was good. This was normal, just 3 people enjoying a beautiful afternoon. They stopped in front of the orchid exhibition. Hundreds of blooms in whites and purples and oranges, their petals like silk, their stems impossibly delicate. "They're so pretty," Lily breathed. "My mother loved orchids," Victoria said quietly. "She had a whole greenhouse full of them. After she died, I couldn't look at them for years, but now..." She paused. Now I think about how much care they need, how patient you have to be. They're fragile, but they're also incredibly strong. Jack glanced at her, seeing something raw in her expression. When did you lose her? 10 years ago. Cancer. Victoria touched one of the orchid petals gently. I was 26. Old enough to be an adult, young enough to feel like an orphan. I'm sorry. We carry them with us, don't we? The people we've lost. Victoria looked at Lily, who was sketching an orchid in the small notebook Jack always brought for her. But we keep going, for the people who need us. Yeah, Jack said softly. We do. They spent 2 hours in the garden, stopping for ice cream, letting Lily run through the outdoor paths. It felt easy, natural, like they'd done this before. Victoria asked Jack about his work, his life in Boston, his favorite places in the city. She told him about her work with the Family Foundation, about the charities she supported, about her complicated relationship with wealth and obligation. Most people think money solves everything, she said as they walked. But it's just a tool. It can't buy health, or time, or the people you love back. No, Jack agreed. It can't. That's why what you did, saving my life, it matters. You gave me something money can't buy. Before Jack could respond, Lily ran back to them, her notebook clutched in her hands. Miss Victoria, I drew you a picture. It was an orchid carefully sketched, with petals labeled in Lily's careful handwriting. At the bottom she'd written, Thank you for the flowers. Love, Lily. Victoria's eyes went bright. This is beautiful, Lily. Can I keep it? Lily beamed. Yes. I'll put it somewhere I can see it every day. They said goodbye at the garden gates. Victoria hugged Lily, then shook Jack's hand, holding it a moment longer than necessary. Thank you for coming, she said. Thank you for inviting us. Can we do this again sometime? Maybe dinner? Jack hesitated. Every instinct told him to say no, to keep his distance, to protect the quiet life he'd built. But Lily was tugging on his hand, looking up at him with hopeful eyes. Sure, he said. We'd like that. On the train ride home, Lily chattered about the orchids, about Victoria, about all the flowers she wanted to draw. Jack listened, watching the city blur past the windows, and realized something had shifted. He'd spent 4 years building walls, keeping people out, staying safe in his smallness. But Victoria had walked right through those walls without even trying. And instead of feeling threatened, Jack felt something else. He felt alive. The dinner invitation came 2 weeks later, on a Thursday evening when Jack was helping Lily with her math homework. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. There's a small Italian place in the North End I think you'd both enjoy. Saturday at 6? My treat. Lily looked up from her fractions. Is that Ms. Victoria? Jack nodded, still staring at the screen. Can we go, please? Lily's eyes were wide with hope. She'd talked about Victoria almost every day since the botanical gardens, asking when they'd see her again, wondering if they could send her more drawings. It's just dinner, Bug. Don't get too attached. Why not? She's nice, and she likes us. Jack set down his phone. How did you explain to a 10-year-old that people like Victoria Hale didn't stay in lives like theirs? That the botanical gardens had been a thank you, a one-time gesture, and anything more was just delaying the inevitable distance? But looking at Lily's face, so open and trusting, he couldn't find the words. Okay, he said, we'll go. Lily threw her arms around his neck. Thank you, Daddy. Saturday evening found them walking through the North End's narrow streets, past brick buildings that had stood since before the Revolution, their windows glowing warm against the October chill. The smell of garlic and fresh bread filled the air. Street musicians played on corners. Couples strolled hand in hand. The restaurant was called Stella's, tucked between a bakery and a wine shop, easy to miss if you didn't know it was there. Victoria was already seated at a corner table when they arrived, and she stood to greet them with a smile that seemed genuinely happy. You found it! This place has been here 40 years, best carbonara in Boston. They settled into their seats. The restaurant was small, maybe 15 tables, with checkered tablecloths and candles in old wine bottles. Frank Sinatra played softly from hidden speakers. It felt intimate, warm, nothing like the formal restaurants Jack had imagined Victoria frequented. Do you come here often? Jack asked. My mother used to bring me here when I was Lily's age. The owner, Mrs. Rossetti, was her friend. Victoria glanced toward the kitchen, where an elderly woman in an apron was directing the staff with rapid Italian. After my mother died, I stopped coming, but a few months ago, I walked past and Mrs. Rossetti was standing outside. She recognized me immediately, grabbed my face and told me I'd gotten too thin, dragged me inside and fed me enough pasta to feed a family of 4. Lily giggled. Did you eat it all? Most of it. I couldn't disappoint her. A waiter appeared, a young man who greeted Victoria by name and brought coloring pages and crayons for Lily without being asked. They ordered carbonara for Victoria, lasagna for Jack, spaghetti with meatballs for Lily. When the food arrived, it was exactly as promised, perfect, generous, the kind of cooking that came from decades of practice and love. So tell me about school, Lily, Victoria said, twirling pasta on her fork. What's your favorite subject? Art, Lily said immediately. We're doing a unit on famous painters. Last week we learned about Monet. He painted water lilies. He did. Have you been to the Museum of Fine Arts? They have some beautiful Impressionist paintings. Lily shook her head. We can't afford to go to museums much. Jack felt his face flush, but Victoria's expression didn't change. The MFA has free admission for kids under 12 on weekends, and I happen to be a member, which means I can bring guests. She looked at Jack. If you're interested, we could go sometime. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Victoria's voice was gentle but firm. Lily should see those paintings, and honestly, I'd enjoy the company. I usually go alone, and it's more fun to see art through fresh eyes. Jack wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain boundaries, keep accepting her generosity from becoming a pattern. But Lily was looking at him with such hope, and Victoria's offer seemed so sincere that the refusal died in his throat. That would be nice, he said finally. They talked easily through dinner. Victoria asked Jack about his favorite parts of Boston, and he found himself telling her about the hidden spots he'd discovered during his years of driving. A coffee shop in Jamaica Plain that served perfect espresso, a stretch of the Esplanade where you could watch the sunset over the Charles River, a bookstore in Somerville that stayed open until midnight. She listened like she was taking notes, like she genuinely wanted to know. You've built a real life here, Victoria said. That's not easy starting over in a new city. It was necessary. Jack cut into his lasagna. Chicago had too many memories. I needed somewhere we could breathe. Do you ever miss it, the medical work? Jack paused, considering. Sometimes. I miss the purpose of it, feeling like I was doing something that mattered. But I don't miss the weight, the constant awareness that someone's life is in your hands. He met her eyes. Until your ride. That was the first time in 4 years I'd done anything like that. How did it feel? Terrifying. Necessary. He hesitated. Right. Victoria was quiet for a moment, her gaze thoughtful. You're someone who needs to help people. It's not just training, it's who you are. Driving is safe, but it's not enough for you. Not really. The observation landed too close to thoughts Jack had been avoiding. It's enough for now. Is it? Before Jack could answer, Mrs. Rossetti herself appeared at their table, a broad woman in her 70s with flour on her apron and sharp, kind eyes. Victoria Hale, you bring me company, she beamed at Lily. And such a beautiful girl. You like the spaghetti? It's really good, Lily said shyly. Of course it's good. My grandmother's recipe. May she rest in peace. Mrs. Rossetti turned to Jack. And you? You take care of my Victoria, yes? She needs someone who feeds her properly. Too skinny, this one. Victoria laughed. Mrs. Rossetti, this is Jack Dalton. And his daughter, Lily. Good strong name, Jack. You have good hands, I can tell. A working man. She patted his shoulder approvingly. You come back, bring this beautiful family. I give you the best table. After she bustled away, Victoria was still smiling. She's not subtle. She thinks we're together, Jack said, feeling awkward. I know. I didn't correct her because she'd spend 20 minutes matchmaking if I did. Victoria's smile turned wry. Mrs. Rossetti thinks everyone should be married. She's been trying to set me up for years. You're not... Jack stopped, realizing the question was too personal. Married? No. Engaged once, in my 20s. He wanted the Hale name and money more than he wanted me. I figured that out about a week before the wedding. She sipped her wine. Since then, I've been careful. Most men I meet are either intimidated by the money or only interested in it. It's exhausting. That sounds lonely, Lily said quietly. Victoria's expression softened. It can be, but I have work that matters and friends I trust. That's more than a lot of people have. She looked at Jack. And lately, I've been reminded that the best connections happen when you least expect them. The weight of her gaze made Jack look away. He wasn't ready for whatever this was becoming. Wasn't sure he'd ever be ready. They finished dinner with tiramisu that Lily declared the best thing she'd ever tasted. When the check came, Victoria paid before Jack could even reach for his wallet. Outside, the temperature had dropped, and Lily shivered in her light jacket. Without hesitation, Victoria draped her own coat over Lily's shoulders. "I'll be fine," she said when Jack protested. "It's just 3 blocks to my car." "We can take the train," Jack said, but absolutely not. "It's cold and Lily's tired. I'll drive you home." Jack wanted to argue, but Lily was already yawning, and the thought of the long train ride made him weary. "Okay, thank you." Victoria's car was a BMW, dark blue and understated. The interior smelled like leather and the faint trace of her perfume. Lily fell asleep almost immediately in the back seat, curled up with Victoria's coat wrapped around her. Jack gave directions to their apartment in Dorchester, watching Victoria's hands on the wheel. Steady, competent, nothing like the panicked passenger he'd saved weeks ago. "This was really nice," Jack said as they drove. "Lily had a great time." "So did I. I meant what I said about the museum, and there's a concert series at Symphony Hall, family-friendly matinees, if you're interested." Jack turned to look at her. "Victoria, why are you doing this?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Because you saved my life. And I'm grateful." "It feels like more than gratitude." "Maybe it is." She kept her eyes on the road. "The night I almost died, I was coming from a gala where people spent thousands of dollars to feel good about themselves. I was exhausted and cynical and wondering what the point of any of it was. And then I ended up in your car and you—" She paused. "You didn't care who I was or what my name meant. You just saw someone who needed help, and you helped. No hesitation, no calculation, just immediate, instinctive kindness. That's not kindness, that's basic human decency. You'd be surprised how rare that is in my world." Victoria pulled up in front of Jack's building, a 3-story walk-up that had seen better decades. "Most of the people I know would have called 911 and waited. You didn't wait. You acted." She turned to face him. "And then I met Lily, and I saw this whole beautiful life you've built. You're raising an incredible daughter on your own, working a job that doesn't use half your skills, and you're doing it with grace and love and no complaints. That's remarkable, Jack." Jack didn't know what to say. He'd spent 4 years trying to be unremarkable, and here was this woman seeing straight through to everything he'd tried to hide. "I should get Lily inside," he said finally. "Of course." Victoria's smile was gentle. "Think about the museum? Next Saturday?" Jack looked back at Lily, still sleeping peacefully. "I'll check our schedule." He carried Lily upstairs, her head on his shoulder, Victoria's coat still wrapped around her. In the apartment, he tucked her into bed without fully waking her, pulled off her shoes, kissed her forehead. When he went back to the window, Victoria's car was still there. She was sitting in the driver's seat, checking her phone, bathed in the glow of the dashboard lights. Jack watched her for a moment, this woman who'd crashed into his carefully controlled life and refused to leave. Part of him wanted to call down to her, to say something, to acknowledge the pull he felt but didn't want to name. Instead, he stepped back from the window and let the curtain fall. A minute later, the BMW pulled away into the night. The following week passed in a blur of routine, driving shifts, school pickups, homework help, bedtime stories. But Victoria's presence had shifted something in the atmosphere of Jack's life. He found himself thinking about her at odd moments, wondering what she was doing, remembering the way she'd looked at him across the dinner table. On Wednesday, a package arrived at his apartment. Inside was a children's book about Monet, beautifully illustrated, with a note in elegant handwriting. "For Lily. Thought she might enjoy this before we visit the museum. V." Lily was ecstatic. She carried the book everywhere, studying each page, asking Jack questions he couldn't answer about impressionism and light and color theory. "Miss Victoria is so nice," Lily said that night, curled up beside Jack on the couch. "I wish we could see her more." We just saw her Saturday, Bug. I know, but she's fun, and she makes you smile. Jack looked down at his daughter. I smile. Not like that. Not like you do with her. Lily was quiet for a moment. Mom would want you to be happy, Daddy. The words hit Jack like a physical blow. He pulled Lily closer, his throat tight. I am happy. I have you. You can have more than just me. It's okay. 10 years old, and she was already trying to give him permission to move forward. Jack didn't know whether to laugh or cry. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just don't notice because you're busy being sad. I'm not sad. Lily looked up at him with Emily's eyes, the same green-gold color, the same way of seeing straight through his defenses. You're a little bit sad, all the time, but with Ms. Victoria, you're less sad. Jack couldn't argue with that, because Lily was right. Victoria made him feel something other than the low-grade grief that had become his baseline. She made him feel present, engaged, alive in a way he hadn't been since Emily died. And that terrified him. On Saturday, they met Victoria at the Museum of Fine Arts. She was waiting in the grand entrance hall, wearing jeans and a sweater again, her hair in a ponytail. No jewelry, no designer labels, just Victoria, smiling when she saw them. Ready for some art? She asked Lily. Yes. Can we see the Monet paintings first? Absolutely. Follow me. Victoria led them through the galleries with easy familiarity, clearly comfortable in this space. She showed them Monet's water lilies, explaining how the artist had painted the same pond over and over, capturing different lights and seasons. Lily stood transfixed, her face inches from the canvas, studying every brushstroke. It's like he painted feelings, she said quietly. Victoria crouched beside her. That's exactly right. Impressionism isn't about painting what you see. It's about painting what you feel, the way light makes you feel, the way a moment makes you feel. They spent 2 hours wandering the museum. Victoria knew the stories behind the paintings, not in a showy way, but like someone sharing secrets with friends. She told them about Renoir's parties, about Degas' dancers, about Van Gogh's loneliness. She let Lily ask endless questions and answered each one thoughtfully. Jack found himself watching Victoria more than the art. The way she listened to Lily with complete attention. The way she moved through the galleries like she belonged there but never acted superior. The way her whole face lit up when she talked about something she loved. They stopped for lunch in the museum cafe, sandwiches and lemonade at a table overlooking the courtyard. What did you think? Victoria asked Lily. It was amazing. I want to learn to paint like that. Then you should. There are classes at the community center. I could help you find one. Really? Lily's eyes went wide. Really? If your dad thinks it's a good idea. Jack felt that familiar tension between wanting to accept her help and needing to maintain independence. We can look into it. The rec center in Dorchester has a great youth arts program, Victoria said carefully. It's income-based, so it's affordable. A friend of mine runs it. I could introduce you. It was a perfect suggestion, helpful, without being condescending, opening a door without forcing them through it. Jack nodded. That would be great. Thank you. After lunch, Victoria walked them to the subway station. Lily hugged her goodbye, clutching the museum guidebook Victoria had bought her. Thank you, Ms. Victoria. This was the best day. You're very welcome, sweetie. Victoria hugged her back, then straightened and looked at Jack. Same time next week? There's an Egyptian exhibit I think you'd both love. Jack hesitated. Every instinct told him to slow down, to create distance before this became something he couldn't control. But Lily was tugging on his hand, and Victoria was looking at him with those steady brown eyes, and he was so tired of saying no to life. Yeah, he said. We'd like that. On the subway ride home, Lily chattered about the paintings, about the classes she wanted to take, about how lucky they were to know someone as nice as Victoria. Jack listened and nodded and tried to ignore the voice in his head that kept asking, what happens when she gets bored of this? When the novelty of her rescue story wears off and she goes back to her real life? That night, after Lily was asleep, Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Thank you for today. I had more fun than I've had in months. You and Lily are a gift. Jack stared at the message for a long time before typing back, We're the ones who should be thanking you. Her response came immediately. Let's call it even and just enjoy each other's company. No debt, no obligation, just friends. Friends. The word should have felt safe. But looking at it on the screen, Jack felt something twist in his chest. Because Victoria was becoming more than a friend, and they both knew it. The question was what to do about it. He didn't answer the text. Instead, he set down his phone and went to bed, where he lay awake for hours thinking about museums and orchids and the way Victoria had looked at him across the dinner table, like she saw something in him worth knowing. The following Tuesday, Jack was parked outside Lily's school, waiting for dismissal, when his phone rang. It was Dennis, his supervisor at RideLink. "Jack, we need to talk. Can you come by the office tomorrow?" The tone made Jack's stomach drop. "Is everything okay?" "Just come by. 10 a.m. Dennis hung up before Jack could ask more questions. That night, Jack barely slept. He'd been a model employee, perfect ratings, never late, no complaints. What could possibly be wrong? By the time he arrived at the RideLink office the next morning, his nerves were shot. Dennis was waiting in a small conference room, his expression uncomfortable. He was a decent guy, mid-40s, divorced, the kind of manager who tried to be fair. "Have a seat, Jack." Jack sat. "What's this about?" Dennis slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was a photo, Jack and Victoria walking through the botanical gardens, Lily between them. Another photo showed them outside the restaurant. A third showed Victoria's hand on Jack's arm as they talked. "What is this?" Jack asked, his voice hollow. "Paparazzi photos. They hit social media yesterday. The headlines are, well, they're making assumptions about you and Victoria Hale." Jack's vision blurred. He scrolled through the photos, his stomach churning. They looked intimate, romantic, a family. The captions were worse. "Billionaire Heiress's secret romance," and "Victoria Hale's mysterious new man," and "From rideshare driver to billionaire's boyfriend." "This is insane," Jack said. "We're just friends. She's been thanking me for—" He stopped, realizing he'd never told anyone about saving Victoria's life. It had felt private, not something to advertise. "I believe you," Dennis said, "but corporate doesn't care. They're worried about liability, about the optics of drivers fraternizing with passengers." He looked genuinely sorry. "I fought for you, Jack, but they're letting you go, effective immediately." The words didn't make sense. "You're firing me?" "I'm really sorry. You'll get 2 weeks severance, and I'll write you a good reference." Dennis paused. "For what it's worth, this is bullshit. But my hands are tied." Jack walked out of the office in a daze. He sat in his car for 20 minutes, staring at the photos on his phone. Someone had been following them, watching them, turning innocent moments into scandal. His phone rang. Victoria. "Jack, I just saw the photos. I'm so sorry. I had no idea anyone was watching us. I just lost my job." His voice sounded distant, strange. "What? No, I'll fix this. I'll call them and explain." "Don't." Jack's grip tightened on the phone. "You'll just make it worse. Everything you touch turns into a story. That's not fair." "Isn't it? I've been invisible for 4 years. 4 years, Victoria, and 1 month with you, and my life is falling apart." "Jack, please. I have to go pick up my daughter. I can't do this right now." He hung up before she could respond. That afternoon, picking up Lily from school, Jack saw other parents whispering, looking at him sideways. One mother, Sarah, whose daughter was in Lily's class, approached him with a tight smile. "So it's true? You're dating Victoria Hale?" "No," Jack said flatly. "We're friends." "That's not what the internet says." Her smile turned knowing. "Must be nice, landing someone like that. Set for life, right?" Jack walked away without answering, but the damage was done. By the time he got Lily home, his phone was flooded with messages from numbers he didn't recognize. Friend requests on social media he barely used. Reporters asking for comments. He turned off his phone and sat on the couch, his head in his hands. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was small. "Are people mad at us?" "No, Bug. It's just a misunderstanding. Some kids at school said you have a rich girlfriend. Is Ms. Victoria your girlfriend?" Jack looked at his daughter, saw the confusion and worry on her face, and felt something break inside him. He'd spent 4 years protecting her, keeping her safe, building a stable life. and in 1 month it had all shattered. "No," he said. "She's not my girlfriend. She's just someone I helped once, and I think we need to stop seeing her for a while." Lily's face crumpled. "But why? She's our friend." "Because sometimes being friends with certain people makes life complicated, and we need simple right now." "I don't want simple. I want Ms. Victoria."
"Lily, why do you always push people away?" Tears were streaming down Lily's face now. "Mom died, and you won't let anyone else get close. You won't let yourself be happy. And now you're going to make Ms. Victoria go away too, just because you're scared." The words hit like bullets. Jack reached for her, but Lily pulled away, running to her room and slamming the door. Jack sat alone in the living room as darkness fell, his daughter's accusations echoing in his head. She was right. He knew she was right, but he didn't know how to be anything other than scared. His phone buzzed, one message getting through despite the settings. "Victoria, I'm not giving up on us this easily, whatever us means. You saved my life, Jack. Now let me fight for yours." Jack read the message 3 times. Then he set down the phone, walked to Lily's door and knocked gently. "Bug, can we talk?" No answer. But he heard her crying and it broke what was left of his heart. He was still standing there when his phone rang again. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Mr. Dalton, this is Rebecca Marshall from Channel 7 News. We'd love to get your side of the story about you and Victoria Hale. We're prepared to offer compensation for an exclusive interview." Jack hung up and turned off his phone completely. In the silence that followed, he realized something that made his blood run cold. This was only the beginning. By Thursday morning, Jack's life had become a circus he never auditioned for. Reporters camped outside his apartment building. His landlord called, concerned about the disruption to other tenants. His email was flooded with interview requests, book deal offers, and messages from people claiming to be long-lost relatives suddenly interested in reconnecting. He'd applied to 17 driving jobs in 3 days. None had called back. His name was too recognizable now, too attached to scandal and speculation. One hiring manager had been blunt. "We can't take the publicity risk." Jack sat at his kitchen table, staring at his dwindling bank account on his laptop screen. 2 months of rent and savings, maybe 3, if he stretched it. After that, he couldn't think about after that. Lily hadn't spoken to him since their fight. She ate breakfast in silence, came home from school and went straight to her room, answered his questions with one-word responses. The distance between them felt like a chasm, and Jack didn't know how to cross it. On Thursday afternoon, his buzzer rang. Jack checked the window first, a habit he'd developed since the media attention started. A black town car sat at the curb, and standing at his building's entrance was a woman in her 50s wearing an elegant suit, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. Jack pressed the intercom. "Yes?" "Mr. Dalton, my name is Margaret Chen. We spoke on the phone several weeks ago. I work for Victoria Hale. May I come up? I promise I'm not a reporter." Jack hesitated, then buzzed her in. A minute later, she knocked on his door. Up close, Margaret Chen had the kind of face that inspired trust. Intelligent eyes, a warm but professional demeanor, the bearing of someone who'd spent decades managing complicated situations. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, stepping inside. "I won't take much of your time." "Does Victoria know you're here?" "No, this visit is my own initiative, though I suspect she'd approve if she knew." Margaret glanced around the modest apartment. The worn furniture, Lily's drawings on the walls, the general sense of a life held together through effort and love. "May I sit?" Jack gestured to the couch. "What do you want?" Margaret sat, folding her hands in her lap. "I've worked for the Hale family for 23 years. I watched Victoria grow up. I was there when her mother died, when her engagement fell apart, through every difficult moment of her adult life." She paused. "In all that time, I've never seen her as happy as she's been these past few weeks, because of you and your daughter. That happiness has cost me everything. I know, and I'm deeply sorry. The paparazzi situation is my fault. I should have anticipated it, should have put better security measures in place. But Mr. Dalton, what's happening now isn't just random media attention. Someone is deliberately fueling this story." Jack leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "The photos that surfaced weren't taken by regular paparazzi. It came from a private investigator hired by someone with access to information about Victoria's schedule, someone who knew where she'd be and when. Margaret's expression was grave. Someone in her own family. Well, why would her family care about her spending time with us? Because Victoria's father died 2 years ago, leaving her in control of the family foundation and a significant portion of Hale Industries. Her uncle Richard Hale expected to assume that control. He spent the past 2 years trying to undermine Victoria's leadership, looking for any scandal or weakness he can exploit. Margaret pulled a folder from her bag and set it on the coffee table. The timing of these photos isn't coincidence. Next week, the foundation board votes on a major initiative Victoria's been championing, a $100 million commitment to public health programs. Richard opposes it. He wants the money directed to more traditional, conservative investments. Jack stared at the folder without touching it. And he thinks this scandal will make her look irresponsible? Unfit to lead? Exactly. A billionaire heiress cavorting with her rideshare driver while making decisions about massive charitable expenditures? It plays into every stereotype about wealthy people being out of touch, making poor personal choices. Margaret's voice softened. You and Lily are being used as ammunition in a family power struggle you never asked to be part of. The words made Jack's stomach turn. We were just living our lives. I know, and I'm sorry you've been dragged into this. Margaret pushed the folder toward him. This contains information about Richard Hale's involvement, evidence of the PI he hired, records of his attempts to manipulate the media narrative. Victoria doesn't know about most of this yet. I've been quietly investigating for weeks, but she needs to know, and she needs your permission to fight back publicly. My permission? If Victoria goes to war with her uncle over this, you and Lily will be at the center of it. There will be more attention, more scrutiny, possibly worse before it gets better. I won't let her do that without your consent. Margaret met his eyes. But Mr. Dalton, if she doesn't fight, Richard wins. He'll use this scandal to push her out of leadership, redirect the foundation's mission, and undo years of work she's done to honor her parents' legacy. And you'll still be damaged. You'll just have suffered for nothing. Jack rubbed his face, exhausted. What does fighting back look like? Victoria holds a press conference. She tells the truth about the night you saved her life. The full story, not the sanitized version. She explains your friendship as a natural outcome of that experience. She exposes Richard's manipulation and makes it clear that any attack on you is an attack on her. Margaret paused. It won't erase the damage, but it will shift the narrative from scandal to something more honest. And it might give you your life back, or it might make everything worse. That's possible, which is why the choice has to be yours. Jack stood and walked to the window. Outside, a lone photographer sat in a car across the street, camera ready, waiting for something worth selling. Jack thought about Lily, silent and hurt, about his empty job prospects and dwindling savings, about Victoria, who'd done nothing wrong except try to thank someone who helped her. I need to think about it, he said. Of course. Take whatever time you need. Margaret stood, pulling a business card from her pocket. My personal number. Call any time, day or night. And Mr. Dalton? For what it's worth, Victoria never wanted this. She genuinely cares about you and Lily. This isn't strategy or manipulation. It's just a woman who found something real and doesn't want to lose it. After Margaret left, Jack sat on the couch and opened the folder. Inside were surveillance photos, emails, payment records, a paper trail showing exactly how Richard Hale had orchestrated the scandal. The man had spent thousands of dollars to destroy his own niece's reputation, to destroy Jack's life as collateral damage. Jack was still reading when Lily's bedroom door opened. She stood in the hallway, her face blotchy from crying. I heard someone here, she said quietly. It was Victoria's assistant, Margaret. What did she want? Jack closed the folder. Come here, Bug. Lily hesitated, then walked over and sat beside him on the couch. Jack put his arm around her, relieved when she didn't pull away. I'm sorry I yelled at you, Lily said, her voice small. You had every right to be angry. You were telling the truth. Are you really going to make us stop seeing Ms. Victoria? Jack was quiet for a long moment. I've been scared, Lily. Scared of caring about someone again. Scared of what happens if I let someone get close and then lose them. Like I lost your mom. But Ms. Victoria isn't Mom. And she's not going anywhere.
She keeps texting you, even when you don't answer. How do you know that? I saw your phone the other day when you were in the shower. She sent like 10 messages. Lily looked up at him. She really likes us, Daddy, and you like her too. I can tell. Jack couldn't deny it. Yeah, I do. So why can't we just be happy? Why does it have to be so complicated? Because some people are trying to make it complicated. To hurt Victoria by hurting us. Jack pulled Lily closer. But we might have a way to fight back. To tell the truth and stop the lies. It would mean more attention for a while, more cameras and questions. But it might also fix things. Would we get to see Ms. Victoria again? If she still wants to see us after everything that's happened. She does. I know she does. Lily's certainty was absolute, the way only a child's could be. What do we have to do? Jack looked down at his daughter, so brave and so sure, and made his decision. We have to be honest. We have to tell our story and trust that the truth matters more than the lies. He called Margaret that night. We'll do it. Whatever Victoria needs from us, we're in. Margaret's relief was audible. Thank you, Mr. Dalton. I'll coordinate with Victoria and her legal team. The press conference is scheduled for Monday morning. Are you comfortable being there? Will I have to speak? Only if you want to. Mostly we need you and Lily present. Visual proof that you're real people, not characters in a tabloid story. We'll be there. After he hung up, Jack called Victoria for the first time in a week. She answered on the first ring. Jack? I'm sorry, he said, for shutting you out, for blaming you. You don't need to apologize. I'm the one who brought this chaos into your life. That's not true. Your uncle brought it. Margaret told me everything. Jack paused. We want to help. Lily and I will be at the press conference Monday. Victoria's voice broke. You don't have to do that. Yes, we do. Because you're right. We're friends, and friends show up for each other. He took a breath. And because Lily won't forgive me if I let you face this alone. Victoria laughed, a sound somewhere between relief and tears. How is she? Missing you, drawing pictures of orchids and asking when we can see you again. Tell her soon. Tell her as soon as this is over, we'll go back to the botanical gardens. We'll go to the museum. We'll do all of it. Victoria's voice steadied. Jack, I need you to know something. Whatever happens Monday, whatever comes after, I'm not going anywhere. I meant what I said about you and Lily being a gift. That hasn't changed. It hasn't changed for us either. Jack surprised himself with the admission. We missed you. I missed you too, both of you. A pause. Margaret will send over the details for Monday. Try to get some rest this weekend. And Jack, thank you for giving me a chance to make this right. That weekend, Jack kept Lily inside, away from the cameras. They baked cookies, watched movies, played board games, anything to create normalcy in the midst of chaos. On Sunday afternoon, Lily sat at the kitchen table drawing while Jack reviewed the talking points Margaret had sent him, just in case he needed to speak. What are you drawing? He asked. Lily held up her sketchbook. She'd drawn the three of them, Jack, Lily, and Victoria, standing in front of the museum. Above them, she'd written in careful letters, My family. Jack's throat tightened. Bug, Victoria's we're not, I know she's not my mom, but she feels like family. Lily looked at him with those two knowing eyes. Is that okay? Jack thought about the question, about what family meant, about how the people who showed up, who cared, who stayed, maybe they were family, regardless of biology or legal ties. Yeah, he said softly. That's okay. Monday morning arrived cold and bright. Jack dressed in the one suit he owned, bought for job interviews he'd never gotten. He helped Lily into her best dress, braided her hair the way Emily used to. They took a cab to downtown Boston, to the Hale Foundation's headquarters, a gleaming glass building that seemed to touch the sky. Margaret met them in the lobby. The press conference is in the main auditorium. We've had to turn away reporters. Every major outlet wants in. Are you ready? Jack looked down at Lily, who gripped his hand tightly. We're ready. They took an elevator to the 10th floor. The auditorium was packed. Cameras, reporters, bright lights that made Jack's eyes water. A stage had been set up at the front with a podium and microphone. Victoria stood off to the side talking to a man in an expensive suit. Her lawyer, probably.
When she saw Jack and Lily, her whole face transformed. She crossed the room quickly, crouching down to Lily's level. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm so glad you're here." "Hi, Ms. Victoria. I missed you." "I missed you too." Victoria hugged her, then stood and met Jack's eyes. She looked tired but determined, wearing a navy suit that broadcast both professionalism and strength. "Thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it," Victoria's lawyer approached. "We're ready to start, Ms. Hale." "Give me one more minute." Victoria turned back to Jack. "You don't have to say anything. Just being here is enough. But if you feel comfortable sharing what happened that night, the real story, it would help." Jack nodded. "I can do that." The press conference began with Victoria stepping up to the podium. The cameras flashed like lightning. She waited for silence, her hand steady on the podium's edge. "Thank you all for coming. I'm here today to address the recent speculation about my personal life and to set the record straight about my relationship with Jack Dalton and his daughter Lily." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. 6 weeks ago, I nearly died. I was returning home from a charity gala when I suffered a severe allergic reaction. My throat closed. I stopped breathing. If not for the immediate actions of my driver that night, Jack Dalton, I would not be standing here today. The room erupted in murmurs. Cameras swung toward Jack. He kept his expression neutral, his hand on Lily's shoulder. "Mr. Dalton didn't just call for help and wait," Victoria continued. "He pulled me from the car and performed CPR, breathing life back into my lungs until the ambulance arrived. The paramedics told me later that his quick thinking and skilled intervention saved my life. Jack Dalton is a hero. He's also a widowed father raising a remarkable daughter on his own while working a demanding job to support her." Victoria's voice grew stronger, more forceful. "After I recovered, I wanted to thank Jack properly. I invited him and Lily to visit the botanical gardens. We had dinner. We went to the museum. We became friends. And yes, we were photographed during these outings, not by random paparazzi, but by a private investigator hired by my uncle, Richard Hale, who is attempting to undermine my leadership of the Hale Foundation." The murmurs became a roar. Reporters shouted questions. Victoria raised her hand for silence. "My uncle opposes the foundation's upcoming vote to commit $100 million to public health initiatives. He believes this money should be invested elsewhere. Rather than debate the merits of this program through proper channels, he chose to manufacture a scandal, hoping to paint me as irresponsible and unfit for leadership. In doing so, he has harmed an innocent man and his daughter, destroying Jack's livelihood and subjecting a 10-year-old child to public scrutiny she did not ask for and does not deserve." Victoria's hands gripped the podium. "I will not allow this to stand. I have filed a formal complaint with the Foundation's board regarding Richard's conduct. I have also retained legal counsel to pursue action against the individuals he hired to invade our privacy. But most importantly, I want to make something absolutely clear. Jack Dalton and Lily are not a scandal. They are good people who showed me kindness when I needed it most. Our friendship is real, it is valuable, and I will not apologize for it." She stepped back from the podium. "Jack, would you like to say anything?" Jack hadn't planned to speak, but looking at the sea of cameras, at the reporters waiting to twist whatever came next, he realized silence wasn't an option anymore. He stood, bringing Lily with him, and walked to the microphone. "My name is Jack Dalton," he said, his voice rough but steady. "I'm a single father. I drove, for RideLink to support my daughter. I don't have money or power or connections. I'm just a regular person trying to do right by my kid." He paused. 6 weeks ago, I picked up a passenger who stopped breathing in my back seat. I didn't know who she was. I didn't care. I just knew someone needed help, and I had the training to give it, so I did." Jack looked at Victoria. Afterward, Victoria thanked me. She invited us to spend time with her. And you know what? We liked her. Not because she's rich or famous, but because she's kind. Because she listened to my daughter talk about art. Because she made us feel like we mattered. His voice hardened. We didn't ask for attention. We didn't ask to be used in someone's power game. We were just trying to live our lives. And now I've lost my job. My daughter's been harassed at school, and our privacy has been destroyed. All because Victoria's uncle wanted to score points in a business dispute. He gripped the podium. I'm not a victim. I don't want pity, but I do want the truth to matter. Victoria Hale saved our lives just as much as I saved hers.
by reminding us that there are still good people in the world, people who show up, people who care. Jack looked directly at the cameras. That's our story. That's the truth. And no amount of manipulation or scandal-mongering can change it. He stepped back. The room exploded with questions, but Victoria's lawyer moved forward, calling for order. Ms. Hale will not be taking questions at this time. Written statements from all parties will be provided to the press. Thank you. Security escorted them out through a back exit, away from the shouting reporters. In a private conference room, Victoria's legal team congratulated them on their performance. Margaret brought water and assured them the press conference was being broadcast live across every major network. But Jack barely heard any of it. He was watching Lily, who sat in a large leather chair looking small and overwhelmed. He crouched beside her. "You okay, Bug?" "That was scary. All those cameras." "I know, but it's over now. You were so brave." "I didn't do anything." "You showed up. That's everything." Jack kissed her forehead. "I'm proud of you." Victoria knelt on Lily's other side. "Your dad's right. You were incredibly brave. And you know what? After today, things are going to get better. The truth is out now. People know what really happened." "Will Daddy get his job back?" Victoria glanced at Jack, her expression pained. "I'm going to make sure your dad is taken care of. I promise." "I don't want charity," Jack said quietly. "It's not charity. It's justice." Victoria stood. "Can we talk? Privately?" They stepped into an adjoining office, leaving Lily with Margaret. Through the window, Jack could see his daughter coloring on the legal pads Margaret had given her, already returning to normalcy. "I meant what I said about taking care of you," Victoria said. "RideLink had no right to fire you. My lawyers are preparing a wrongful termination suit." "Victoria, let me finish. The Hale Foundation has an emergency response training program. We teach CPR, first aid, disaster preparedness to communities that can't afford traditional training. We need a program director, someone with real experience, someone who can teach and lead." She met his eyes. "The job is yours if you want it. $60,000 a year, full benefits, reasonable hours so you can still be there for Lily. You'd be working for the foundation, not for me personally. It's a legitimate position that you're genuinely qualified for." Jack stared at her. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a career, a chance to use your skills to help people again, to do work that matters." Victoria's voice softened. "You saved my life, Jack. Not just that night in the car, but these past weeks. You reminded me why the foundation exists, to help real people, not just write checks and feel good about ourselves. If you take this job, you wouldn't be doing me a favor. I'd be doing the world a favor by putting you where you belong." Jack wanted to say yes, wanted it so badly it scared him. But years of protecting himself made him hesitate. "People will say I'm only getting it because you and I, let them say whatever they want. We know the truth." Victoria stepped closer. "And speaking of the truth, I need to ask you something. These past weeks, before everything fell apart, were you happy? When we were together, the three of us. Were you happy?" The question was simple and enormous all at once. Jack thought about the botanical gardens, about Lily's laughter at the museum, about Victoria's hand on his arm as they walked through art galleries, about feeling seen for the first time in 4 years. "Yes," he admitted, "I was happy. So was I. Happier than I've been in a decade." Victoria's eyes searched his face. "I don't know what this is between us. I don't know where it goes, but I know I don't want to lose it because of fear or scandal or other people's agendas." She paused. "Do you?" Jack thought about Emily, about the guilt he'd carried for wanting to move forward. But he also thought about Lily's drawing, about her certain declaration that Victoria felt like family, about how grief didn't mean he had to stop living. "No," he said, "I don't want to lose it either." Victoria's smile was like sunrise. "Then we'll figure it out, together, one day at a time." "One day at a time," Jack echoed. They returned to the conference room where Lily had drawn an elaborate picture of the three of them defeating a dragon labeled Mean Uncle Richard. Margaret was trying not to laugh. "I think we have our next PR strategy," she said, showing them the drawing. Victoria laughed, the sound bright and free. "Can I keep this?" "Yes, it's for you," Lily beamed. "To remember that we're a team." "I won't forget," Victoria promised. They left the building through the parking garage to avoid the media still gathered out front. Victoria's driver took them back to Jack's apartment. The three of them squeezed into the back seat, Lily chattering about the press conference and the fancy office and whether they could get lunch soon because she was starving. At Jack's building, the photographer across the street was gone. Maybe because the story had changed. Maybe because there were easier targets now that the truth was out. "Thank you," Jack said to Victoria, "for fighting for us. Thank you for letting me." Victoria hugged Lily goodbye, then met Jack's eyes over his daughter's head. "I'll call you tomorrow? To talk about the job and everything else?" "I'd like that." After Victoria's car pulled away, Jack and Lily climbed the stairs to their apartment. Inside, Jack made grilled cheese sandwiches while Lily told him in exhaustive detail everything Margaret had said, everything she'd seen, everything she'd thought during the press conference. "Daddy," she said, after she'd finally run out of words, "are we going to be okay now?" Jack looked at his daughter, so small, so brave, so full of hope, and felt something shift inside him. The fear that had governed his life for 4 years didn't disappear, but it no longer felt insurmountable. "Yeah, Bug," he said. "I think we are." That night, after Lily was asleep, Jack sat on his couch and watched the press conference replay on the news. The anchors were calling it a stunning reversal, praising Victoria's courage, expressing sympathy for Jack's situation. One commentator called it a masterclass in crisis management and authentic storytelling. But what struck Jack most was watching himself on screen. The man at that podium didn't look invisible. He looked solid, real, present. He looked like someone worth knowing. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Channel 7 just called Richard the villain of the week. I'd feel bad for him if he hadn't earned it. How are you holding up? Jack typed back. Tired, relieved, grateful. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start rebuilding. And Jack? I meant everything I said today. About you, about the job, about all of it. I know. I meant everything I said too. He set down his phone and went to check on Lily one more time. She'd kicked off her blankets, her stuffed rabbit clutched tight. Jack covered her gently, then stood in her doorway the way he did every night, watching her breathe, counting his blessings. 1 month ago, he'd been invisible. A driver ferrying strangers through the city, content with his smallness, his safety, his careful routine. Now his life was anything but small. It was messy and public and uncertain, but it was also full in a way it hadn't been since Emily died. Full of possibility, full of connection, full of a woman and a chance and a future he hadn't let himself imagine. Jack didn't know what came next, but for the first time in 4 years, he was ready to find out. The backlash against Richard Hale was swift and brutal. By Tuesday morning, 3 board members had publicly called for his resignation from the Hale Foundation. By Wednesday, 2 major business partners had severed ties with his investment firm. The press, which had feasted on Jack and Victoria's supposed scandal, now turned its appetite toward the man who'd manufactured it. Jack watched it unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and unease. He'd never wanted to destroy anyone. He'd just wanted his life back. On Thursday, Margaret called. The board voted this morning. Richard is out. Victoria's public health initiative passed unanimously, and the foundation's legal team has negotiated a settlement with RideLink on your behalf, 6 months' salary, a formal apology, and removal of the termination from your record. That's incredible, Jack said, sitting down heavily on his couch. It's what you deserve. Oh, and one more thing. Richard's lawyer contacted us. He wants to apologize to you personally. He's asking for a meeting. Jack's jaw tightened. I don't want his apology. I told Victoria you'd say that, but she thinks you should consider it, not for his sake, for yours, to put this chapter behind you completely. Margaret paused. Of course, the choice is entirely yours. Jack thought about it for a long moment. Tell him I'll meet him, once, in a public place, with Victoria there. I'll arrange it. They met on Saturday morning at a cafe near the Common, neutral territory where neither party had the advantage. Richard Hale arrived exactly on time, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of face that had probably been handsome before bitterness carved lines around his mouth. He wore an expensive suit that somehow looked diminished on him, as if the weight of his choices had shrunk him. Victoria was already seated when Jack arrived, and she stood when she saw him, her hand briefly touching his arm in greeting. Richard remained seated, watching them with an expression Jack couldn't quite read. "Mr. Dalton," Richard said, his voice formal. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." Jack sat across from him, Victoria beside him. "I'm here. Say what you need to say." Richard's hands were clasped on the table, his knuckles white. "I owe you an apology. What I did, hiring investigators, leaking those photographs, attempting to use you and your daughter as leverage against Victoria, it was unconscionable. I've spent my entire career priding myself on integrity, and I threw it away because I couldn't accept that my brother chose his daughter over his brother to lead our family's legacy." "This isn't about me," Victoria said quietly. "This is about you refusing to accept that times change, that the Foundation's mission needed to evolve. You're right. I was afraid that everything my father and brother built would be dismantled, turned into something unrecognizable. I thought I was protecting their memory." Richard's gaze dropped to his hands. "Instead, I dishonored it. I hurt innocent people. I betrayed my own family." He looked up at Jack. "I can't undo what I've done, but I can promise you that I will spend whatever time I have left making amends. I've established a fund, $100,000, in your daughter's name for her education. And I've made a personal donation to single-parent support organizations in Boston. It's not enough. It will never be enough. But it's a start." Jack felt Victoria stiffen beside him, clearly as surprised as he was. $100,000. It was more money than Jack had ever imagined having. Enough to secure Lily's future, to erase years of financial anxiety. "I don't want your money," Jack said. Richard nodded slowly. "I understand. But the fund is already established, irrevocable, in Lily's name. Whether you accept it or not, it will be there when she needs it. For college, for her future, for whatever she dreams of becoming." He paused. "Consider it not a payment, but a penance. One I hope, someday, might mean something." Jack wanted to refuse, wanted to throw the gesture back in Richard's face, but he thought about Lily, about the art classes she wanted to take, the museums she wanted to visit, the education she deserved. His pride wasn't worth denying her those opportunities. "Okay," he said finally. "For Lily, not for me. That's all I ask." Richard stood, extending his hand. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Dalton. And Victoria, I'm sorry. For everything." Victoria didn't take his hand. "I accept your apology, Uncle Richard, but I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." Her voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "If you truly want to make amends, do it through action. Support the causes you tried to destroy. Live with integrity instead of just talking about it. And leave Jack and his daughter alone." Richard's hand dropped. He nodded once, then walked out of the cafe without looking back. After he left, Jack and Victoria sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Victoria spoke. "Are you okay?" "I don't know. That was unexpected." "The money?" "All of it. The apology, the fund, the fact that he actually looked sorry." Jack rubbed his face. "I wanted him to be a villain. It's easier when people are just villains." "He is a villain. He just happens to be a human one." Victoria's hand found his across the table. "But he's right about one thing. That fund will be there for Lily. And you should let yourself accept that. Not as forgiveness, but as justice. She deserves it." Jack looked at their joined hands. When had that become natural? When had Victoria's touch become something he needed instead of something that made him nervous? "When do I start?" he asked. "The job?" "Whenever you're ready. Monday, if you want. Or you can take some time, let everything settle." "Monday's good. The sooner I'm working again, the sooner things feel normal." Victoria smiled. "Normal? I'm not sure either of us knows what that means anymore. Maybe we get to figure it out. Build our own normal." "I'd like that." They finished their coffee, talking about the job, about the Foundation's work, about the communities Jack would be training. It felt good to discuss the future instead of dwelling on the past. Felt good to imagine himself teaching again, helping people, using his skills for something that mattered. When they left the cafe, the November sun was bright and cold. They walked through the common, past the bronze soldiers and the ancient trees, the paths filled with joggers and families and people just living their lives. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. That night in the car when I stopped breathing, what were you thinking? What made you so certain you could save me? Jack considered the question. I wasn't certain, but I knew I had to try. My wife died in my arms. I tried to save her and failed. I swore I'd never put myself in that position again, responsible for someone's life. But when you stopped breathing, I didn't think about my fear or my past. I just acted. He paused. Maybe that's what courage is. Not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. You're a remarkable man, Jack Dalton. I'm just a man who got a second chance. He met her eyes. We both did. That night, Jack told Lily about the education fund. She was quiet for a long time, processing, and then she asked the question that had been on Jack's mind all day. Does this mean we have to forgive him, Mr. Richard? Jack sat beside her on her bed. No. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone. It's something you give when and if you're ready. Right now, we can just accept that he's trying to make things right. That's enough. Will Ms. Victoria forgive him? I don't know. That's her choice to make. Lily was quiet, then said, I'm glad we have the money for college, but I'm more glad we have Ms. Victoria. She looked up at Jack. Are you going to marry her? The question caught Jack completely off guard. What? No, I mean, we're not even dating, Bug. We're just friends. You hold hands. That was just once. You smile at her different than you smile at other people. And she looks at you like you're important. Lily's expression was far too knowing for a 10-year-old. Mom would want you to be happy, and Ms. Victoria makes you happy. So why can't you be together? Jack didn't have a good answer. It's complicated. That's what adults say when they're scared. Out of the mouths of children. Jack kissed Lily's forehead. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't listen. But she was smiling, already forgiving him. Monday morning, Jack put on his suit and took the train to the Hale Foundation's offices. Margaret met him in the lobby, efficient and warm as always, and guided him through the building. The Emergency Response Program offices were on the 8th floor, a suite of rooms filled with training equipment, CPR dummies, medical supplies, and a small classroom space. This is where you'll do most of your teaching, Margaret said, showing him the classroom. We run courses 3 times a week, Tuesday evenings, Saturday mornings, and Sunday afternoons. Mostly community groups, church organizations, school staff, anyone who wants to learn life-saving skills but can't afford expensive certification programs. Jack looked around the room at the neat rows of chairs, the whiteboard on the wall, the supplies organized on shelves. It felt right in a way driving never had, like coming home. And this is your office, Margaret continued, opening a door to a small but well-appointed room with a desk, computer, and window overlooking the city. You'll have an assistant starting next week, someone to handle scheduling and registration. For now, I'll help you get oriented. Victoria wanted you to have time to review the curriculum, maybe update it based on your experience. Jack set his bag down, still trying to process that this was real, that he had an office, a purpose, a future that involved more than just surviving. Thank you, he said to Margaret, for everything, for believing this was possible. Thank Victoria. She's the one who fought for this position. And for you. Margaret smiled. She'll stop by later to check on you. Try not to be too overwhelmed. First days are always strange. After Margaret left, Jack spent the morning reviewing curriculum materials, familiarizing himself with the Foundation's protocols, responding to emails from people who wanted to schedule training sessions. It was good work, meaningful work, and he felt muscles he'd forgotten he had beginning to wake up. Around noon, Victoria appeared in his doorway. She was dressed for business, tailored pants and a silk blouse, but her smile was pure warmth. How's it going? She asked. Good. Really good, actually. Jack gestured to the stacks of curriculum guides on his desk. There's a lot to learn, but it feels right. I'm glad. Victoria stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. I have something for you. A welcome gift. She handed him a small wrapped box. Inside was a brass nameplate. Jack Dalton, Director of Emergency Response Training. For your desk, Victoria said. So it feels real. Jack ran his thumb over the engraved letters. It's perfect. Thank you. You earned it. This position exists because you proved why it matters, because you showed that training and skill and courage can save lives. She paused. I'm proud of you, Jack. Proud to know you. Proud to work alongside you. The words landed like a gift. Jack set the nameplate down carefully and met Victoria's eyes. Can I ask you something? Why me? You could have hired anyone for this position. Someone with more recent experience, someone without all the baggage I brought. Because you understand what this work means. You've lived it. You've lost someone you couldn't save, and you've saved someone you didn't know. You carry both of those experiences, and that makes you the perfect person to teach others. Victoria's gaze was steady. And because I trust you, I trust your judgment, your integrity, your heart. That's rare, Jack, rarer than you know. Jack wanted to close the distance between them, wanted to pull her close and say all the things he'd been afraid to admit. But this was her workplace, and he was her employee now, and there were lines that shouldn't be crossed in professional settings. Have dinner with us this week, he said instead. Nothing fancy? Just spaghetti at our place. Lily's been asking about you. Victoria's smile was sunlight breaking through clouds. I'd love that. When? Friday? 6 o'clock? I'll be there. The week passed in a blur of activity. Jack taught his first class on Wednesday evening, 15 community health workers learning CPR and basic first aid. Standing in front of them, demonstrating compressions on the dummy, explaining the critical steps that could mean the difference between life and death, Jack felt something click into place. This was what he was meant to do. This was who he was meant to be. The students were engaged, asking questions, practicing techniques, thanking him afterward for making the training accessible and clear. One woman, a home health aide in her 50s, shook his hand and said, "You gave me the confidence to act if something happens. That's everything." That night, Jack called Emily's mother, something he did once a month, a connection to the past he'd maintained for Lily's sake. He told her about the job, about Victoria, about everything that had happened. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Emily would be so proud of you," she said finally, her voice thick with emotion. "You've given Lily a beautiful life, and you've started to build a new one for yourself. That's what she would have wanted." "I feel guilty sometimes," Jack admitted. "Moving forward, being happy." "Don't. Love isn't a finite resource, Jack. Loving someone new doesn't diminish what you had with Emily. It just means your heart is big enough for both." She paused. "This Victoria, do you love her?" Jack thought about the question, about Victoria's hand in his, about the way she listened to Lily, about how his chest felt lighter when she was near. "I think I'm starting to," he said quietly. "Then let yourself. You deserve happiness. So does Lily, and so did Emily. She wanted you to live fully, not just survive." After they hung up, Jack sat in the dark living room and let himself cry. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense of permission he'd been waiting years to receive. Permission to move forward, permission to love again, permission to be happy without guilt. Friday arrived clear and cold, the kind of November evening that smelled like wood smoke and coming winter. Jack and Lily spent the afternoon cooking, homemade spaghetti sauce simmering on the stove, garlic bread in the oven, a salad. Lily insisted on making herself because she wanted everything to be perfect. "Is this a date?" Lily asked, setting the table with their best dishes, mismatched but clean. "It's dinner with a friend." "A friend you like?" Jack laughed despite himself. "Where did you learn that term?" "School. Everyone knows about liking people." Lily arranged napkins with exaggerated care. "Do you like Ms. Victoria?" "I like her very much. Whether it's like remains to be seen." "It's definitely like, I can tell." Victoria arrived at exactly 6, carrying a bottle of wine and a box of fancy chocolates. She'd changed from her work clothes into jeans and a sweater, her hair down, and she looked so genuinely happy to be there that Jack felt his nervousness evaporate. "Something smells amazing," she said, stepping inside. "Daddy made a special sauce," Lily announced proudly, "with 17 ingredients." 17? That's impressive. Victoria handed Jack the wine. "I wasn't sure what you liked, so I went with a safe red." "It's perfect." "Thank you." They ate at the small kitchen table, the three of them squeezed around it in a way that felt cozy rather than cramped. Lily dominated the conversation, telling Victoria about school, about the art class she'd started, about a book she was reading. Victoria listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at Lily's stories, making her feel heard and important. Jack watched them interact and felt something profound settle in his chest. This was what happiness looked like. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but spaghetti dinners and easy laughter and his daughter's joy at being seen. After dinner, they played board games. Lily's Choice, a complicated strategy game about building civilizations that she consistently won. Victoria was a gracious loser, and Jack enjoyed watching the competitive gleam in her eye as she tried to outsmart a 10-year-old. At 8:30, Jack sent Lily to get ready for bed. She hugged Victoria goodnight with the easy affection of someone who'd become part of their routine, then disappeared into her room. Jack and Victoria cleaned up the dinner dishes together, moving around the small kitchen in comfortable synchronicity. When the last plate was dried and put away, they sat on the couch with glasses of wine, the apartment quiet except for the sound of water running in Lily's bathroom. "Thank you for tonight," Victoria said. "I can't remember the last time I had this much fun. Board games and spaghetti. Belonging somewhere, feeling like part of something real." She turned to face him. "My life is usually very polished, very controlled. Every interaction is calculated, every appearance managed. But here with you and Lily, I get to just be Victoria. Not the heiress, not the foundation director, just me." "I like just Victoria," Jack said quietly. "I like just Jack too. The man who saves lives and makes 17-ingredient sauce and raises the most remarkable daughter I've ever met." Victoria set down her wine glass. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "I've been thinking about what you said at the cafe, about courage being action despite fear. I've been afraid for so long, Jack, afraid to trust people, afraid to let anyone get close, afraid of being used or disappointed or hurt." She paused. "But with you, I'm not afraid. Or maybe I am, but it doesn't matter because being with you feels worth the risk." Jack's heart was pounding. "Victoria, I know this is complicated. I'm your employer, technically, even though you report to the board and not to me directly. I know there are optics to consider, professional boundaries, a dozen reasons why we should keep this purely platonic." Her eyes met his. "But I don't want to. I don't want to pretend I don't feel what I feel, that you don't matter to me, that this, whatever this is between us, isn't important." Jack set down his own glass. "I feel the same way. I have for weeks. But I kept telling myself it was impossible, that you were out of my league, that I was just the driver who happened to be there when you needed help. You were never just anything. From the moment you breathed life back into my lungs, you've been extraordinary." Victoria's hand found his. "I don't know how to do this. I haven't dated seriously in years. I don't know how to navigate a relationship with all the complications we have, but I want to try. If you do." Jack thought about Emily, about the love he'd lost and the guilt he'd carried. But he also thought about what Emily's mother had said, that love wasn't finite, that moving forward wasn't betrayal. And he thought about Lily's drawing, about her certainty that they were family. "I want to try," he said. "I'm terrified, and I'll probably mess it up a dozen times, but I want to try." Victoria's smile was radiant. "We'll mess it up together. Fair?" "Fair." Jack didn't plan what happened next. He just leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, two people who'd been hurt learning to trust again. But then Victoria's hand cupped his face, and Jack's arms went around her waist, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Victoria rested her forehead against his. "That was—" she started. "Yeah," Jack agreed. They sat like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, the world reduced to the small circle of their shared warmth. Then Lily's bedroom door opened, and they sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Lily appeared in the hallway in her pajamas, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. She took one look at them, Jack's flushed face, Victoria's disheveled hair, their obvious embarrassment, and grinned. "I knew it was like," she announced triumphantly. Victoria laughed, the sound bright and free. "You're very observant, Lily." "I know. Daddy, does this mean Ms. Victoria is your girlfriend now?" Jack looked at Victoria, who was trying not to laugh. "I think maybe we're figuring that out." "Good. I approve." Lily walked over and hugged Victoria. "You can come to dinner every Friday, and maybe some other days too. And you have to come to my art show next month." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," Victoria promised. After Lily went back to bed, this time actually sleeping, Jack walked Victoria to the door. They stood in the hallway, reluctant to say goodnight. "This is really happening," Victoria said, wonder in her voice. "Apparently my daughter has declared it so, and she's usually right about these things." "Smart kid." Victoria kissed him again, soft and sweet. "I'll see you Monday at work. We should probably keep things professional there, at least until we figure out how to navigate this." "Agreed, but Friday nights are ours? And maybe some other nights too. We'll figure it out." Victoria smiled. "Together." After she left, Jack checked on Lily one more time. She was awake, reading by her nightlight. "Hey, Bug, shouldn't you be asleep?" "I wanted to make sure Ms. Victoria got home safe. Did she?" "Her driver picked her up. She's fine." Lily set down her book. "Are you happy, Daddy?" Jack sat on the edge of her bed. "Yeah, Bug. I'm really happy." "Good. You deserve to be happy. And Ms. Victoria deserves us. We're pretty great." Jack laughed and kissed her forehead. "Yes, we are. Now go to sleep. We have a big day tomorrow." "What's tomorrow?" "I don't know yet, but it'll be good." In his own bed that night, Jack lay awake thinking about everything that had changed. 2 months ago, he'd been invisible, carefully constructing a life small enough to be safe. Now he had a career he cared about, a woman who made him feel alive, and a daughter who was brave enough to push him toward happiness when he was too scared to reach for it himself. He thought about that night in the car, about pressing his mouth to Victoria's and breathing air into her lungs, about how one desperate act had set everything else in motion, about how saving her life had somehow saved his own. The next morning, Jack woke to find a text from Victoria sent at midnight. "Thank you for tonight, for everything, for being brave enough to try. I can't wait to see where this goes." He typed back, "Me too. See you Monday, boss." Her response came immediately. "Monday at work, I'm your boss. Friday nights, we're equals. Deal?" "Deal." Jack got up, made breakfast, helped Lily with her weekend homework, and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in 4 years. He felt hopeful. The foundation board meeting was scheduled for the following Wednesday, and Victoria asked Jack to attend. "I want you to present the Emergency Response Program's expansion plan. Show them what we're building." Jack spent 3 days preparing, reviewing statistics on cardiac arrest survival rates, gathering testimonials from people they'd trained, creating a budget proposal for expanded community outreach. On Wednesday morning, he put on his best suit and took the elevator to the foundation's top floor, where the boardroom overlooked all of Boston. 12 board members sat around a massive oak table. Jack recognized a few faces from the news, business leaders, philanthropists, people whose decisions shaped the city. At the head of the table sat Victoria, poised and professional, every inch the foundation director. "Members of the board," she began, "I'd like to introduce Jack Dalton, our Director of Emergency Response Training. Jack has prepared a proposal for expanding our life-saving education programs into underserved communities." "Jack?" Jack stood, his hands steady despite his nerves. He thought about the home health aide who'd thanked him for giving her confidence, about the community center workers learning to respond to emergencies, about all the lives that could be saved if more people had basic training. He presented his plan: mobile training units that could travel to communities without easy access to the foundation's offices, partnerships with schools to train teachers and staff, certification programs for community health workers. He showed them the numbers, the potential impact, the relatively modest cost for enormous benefit. When he finished, the board members asked questions. Tough questions about sustainability, about measuring outcomes, about long-term funding. Jack answered each one, drawing on his years of experience, his understanding of emergency medicine, his passion for the work. Finally, the board chair, a woman in her 70s who'd made her fortune in biotech, spoke. "Mr. Dalton, this is the most compelling program proposal I've seen in my 15 years on this board. You've done exceptional work. I move that we approve the full expansion budget." "Seconded," another member said immediately. The vote was unanimous. After the meeting, board members approached Jack to shake his hand, to thank him, to tell him about family members whose lives had been saved by bystander CPR. Victoria watched from across the room, her pride visible even in the professional setting. Later, in the elevator down to their floor, Victoria allowed herself to smile.
You were incredible up there. I was terrified.
Couldn't tell. You had the meeting out of your hand by minute 3. The elevator doors opened and they stepped into the hallway. Jack, do you realize what you just did? You secured $500,000 in funding. You're going to save hundreds of lives with this program. The magnitude of it hit him. $500,000. Hundreds of lives. Work that mattered on a scale he'd never imagined. I couldn't have done it without you, he said. Without you believing I could. I just opened the door.
You walked through it all on your own. Victoria glanced around to make sure they were alone, then quickly squeezed his hand. I'll see you Friday? Wouldn't miss it. That Friday dinner became a tradition. Victoria would arrive at 6 with wine or dessert or flowers, and they'd cook together while Lily did homework at the kitchen table. After dinner, they'd play games or watch movies or just talk. The three of them finding their rhythm, building something that felt like family. Some Fridays, Victoria stayed late, and she and Jack would sit on the couch after Lily went to bed, talking about everything and nothing, stealing kisses in the quiet moments, learning each other's histories and hopes. Other Fridays, Jack would get a babysitter, and he and Victoria would go out, to restaurants or concerts, or just walks through the city, holding hands like regular people falling in love, because that's what was happening. Jack could feel it, the way his heart lifted when Victoria walked into a room, the way her laugh made everything seem lighter, the way he'd started thinking in terms of we instead of I. It terrified him. But it also felt inevitable, like everything that had happened was leading to this. In December, the foundation held its annual gala, the same event Victoria had been returning from the night she almost died. This time, she asked Jack to be her date. Are you sure? Jack asked when she extended the invitation. People will talk. People are always talking. Let them talk about the truth for once. That I'm seeing someone remarkable who makes me happy. Victoria smiled. Besides, you cleaned up pretty well at the board meeting. I have faith in your gala performance. Jack rented a tuxedo he couldn't quite afford and met Victoria at her Beacon Hill home, a stately brick building he'd only ever seen from the outside. Inside, it was beautiful but impersonal, like a museum of someone else's life. Victoria appeared at the top of the stairs in a midnight blue gown, and Jack forgot how to breathe. You look stunning, he managed. You're not so bad yourself. She descended the stairs, her hand on the banister, her eyes never leaving his. Ready to face the wolves? As long as you're beside me. The gala was everything Jack had imagined and more. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, women in gowns that cost more than his car, men in tuxedos discussing mergers and acquisitions. Jack felt out of place until Victoria took his arm and introduced him to everyone not as her charity case or her employee, but simply as Jack, my partner. They danced, which Jack was terrible at, and Victoria laughed and led him through the steps. They made small talk with donors and board members. They sat through speeches and auctions and toasts. And through it all, Victoria's hand never left his, grounding him, reminding him that he belonged here because she wanted him here. Near the end of the evening, Mrs. Rossetti appeared, dressed to the nines and beaming. She pulled Victoria into a hug and wagged her finger at Jack. I knew it. I told you, yes? Good, strong hands. You listen to me next time. You were right, Mrs. Rossetti, Victoria said, laughing, about everything. After the gala, Victoria's driver took them back to Jack's apartment, where the babysitter reported that Lily had been perfect and was fast asleep. Jack walked the sitter out, and when he returned, Victoria was standing in his living room looking at Lily's drawings on the walls. She's incredibly talented, Victoria said, studying a watercolor of the botanical gardens. She gets it from her mother. Emily was artistic too. Victoria turned to face him. Can I ask about her? About Emily? You've told me bits and pieces, but I want to know her, to understand who she was. Jack sat on the couch, and Victoria joined him. He talked for an hour about Emily, about how they met in college, about her love of photography, about the way she laughed at her own jokes, about how she'd been so excited to become a mother. He talked about her death, about the aneurysm that came without warning, about holding her while the life left her body. I blamed myself for a long time, Jack admitted. I was an EMT. I should have been able to save her. And when I couldn't, when she died anyway, I felt like a failure, like all my training was worthless. Victoria's hand found his. You're not a failure. Some things are beyond our control, beyond our skill. That doesn't make us powerless. It just makes us human.
I know that now. But it took a long time. Jack met her eyes. It took you, actually. Saving you helped me forgive myself for not being able to save her. I'm glad. Emily deserves to be remembered with love, not guilt. Victoria paused. Do you think she'd approve? Of us? Jack smiled. Yeah, I think she would. She always wanted me to be happy. And you make me happy, Victoria. Happier than I thought I could be again. You make me happy too. You and Lily both. Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. I love you, Jack. I didn't plan to. I tried not to, but I do. The words hung in the air between them, precious and terrifying. Jack turned to face her, cupping her face in his hands. I love you too, he said. I think I have for a while now. I was just too scared to say it. Victoria kissed him, and it felt like a promise, like a beginning, like all the broken pieces of their lives finally finding a way to fit together. They stayed like that until midnight, wrapped in each other on Jack's worn couch, talking about the future, about possibilities, about what they were building together. When Victoria finally left, Jack checked on Lily and found her awake again, reading under her covers. Did you have a good time at the fancy party? She asked. I did. How did you know I was at a party? The babysitter told me. She said you looked very handsome in your tuxedo. Jack sat on her bed. Were you okay tonight, with me being gone? I was fine, but, Daddy, I'm glad you're home now. I missed you. I missed you too, Bug. Jack kissed her forehead. Get some sleep. We have art class in the morning. Is Miss Victoria coming? Not tomorrow, but soon. Good. I like when she's here, huh? It feels like we're a real family. Jack's throat tightened. We are a real family. We've always been a real family. I know, but now we're a bigger one, and that's even better. Lying in bed that night, Jack thought about families, about the ones you're born into and the ones you choose, about loss and love and the courage it takes to open your heart after it's been broken. He thought about Victoria, about Lily, about the life they were building together. And for the first time since Emily died, Jack let himself believe that happiness wasn't something he'd lost forever. It was something he could build again. One Friday dinner at a time, one kiss at a time, one brave choice at a time. Outside his window, Boston slept beneath December stars. Inside, Jack closed his eyes and dreamed of the future, of art shows and museums and botanical gardens, of Lily growing up with two parents who loved her, of growing old beside a woman who saw him, truly saw him, and loved him anyway. The breath he'd given Victoria that desperate night had saved her life. But somehow, in the strange alchemy of love and fate and second chances, it had saved his too. Winter arrived in earnest, blanketing Boston in snow that transformed the city into something from a postcard. Jack's emergency response program expanded faster than anyone had anticipated. By January, they were training in 3 community centers across the city, with a waiting list of organizations requesting their services. The mobile training unit, a retrofitted van equipped with CPR dummies and medical supplies, became a familiar sight in neighborhoods that had never seen resources like this before. Jack thrived in the work. Every class he taught, every person who learned how to save a life, felt like redemption for the life he couldn't save. One evening in late January, a former student called him, voice shaking with adrenaline. She'd performed CPR on her elderly neighbor and kept him alive until paramedics arrived. The man survived, was recovering in the hospital, would get to see his grandchildren grow up because someone had known what to do. You taught me that, the woman said. You gave me the tools to save him. After the call, Jack sat in his office for a long time, overwhelmed by the enormity of it. One life saved because he taught someone how to act in crisis. How many more lives would be saved by the hundreds of people he'd trained? The ripple effect was staggering. He called Victoria to tell her. She was at a donor meeting but stepped out to take his call, and when he shared the news, her joy was as genuine as his own. Do you see now? She said. Do you see what you're building? This is your legacy, Jack. Real, measurable, life-saving impact. Our legacy, he corrected. None of this happens without you. We make a good team. Yeah, Jack said, warmth spreading through his chest. We really do. By February, Jack and Victoria had settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable, real, like something that could last. She came to Friday dinners without fail, often arriving early to help cook, her sleeves rolled up
and flour on her hands as she learned to make Lily's favorite cookies. Some weekends, Jack and Lily would visit Victoria's house in Beacon Hill, and they'd spend lazy afternoons in her library or her mother's old greenhouse, where orchids still bloomed in profusion. Lily adored the greenhouse. She'd spend hours sketching the flowers, asking Victoria questions about each species, carefully tending the plants under Victoria's patient instruction. Watching them together, Jack could see the bond forming. Not a replacement for Emily, never that, but something equally precious. Victoria treated Lily with respect and genuine interest, never patronizing, never false. And Lily, in turn, had adopted Victoria into her small circle of trusted people with the wholehearted certainty of a child who knows she's loved. "Miss Victoria?" Lily asked one Saturday afternoon in March, her hands gentle on an orchid's delicate stem. "Do you think my mom would like you?" Victoria's expression went soft. She set down her watering can and knelt beside Lily. "I hope she would. From everything your dad has told me, she sounds like she was an incredible person." She was. She used to draw with me, and she always knew how to make Daddy smile even when he was sad. Lily was quiet for a moment. "I think she'd be happy that you make him smile now, that you take care of us. You and your dad take care of me too, more than you realize." "Because we're a family now?" Victoria glanced at Jack, who stood in the greenhouse doorway watching them. "Yeah," she said gently. "I think we are." That evening, after Lily fell asleep on Victoria's couch mid-movie, Jack carried her to one of the guest rooms. When he returned, Victoria had opened a bottle of wine and was curled up in the library, a fire crackling in the fireplace. "She asked me if we're a family," Victoria said as Jack sat beside her. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to overstep. "You didn't, and you're right. We are a family. Maybe not a traditional one, but family all the same." Jack took her hand. "Lily loves you, and so do I. I love you both. So much it scares me sometimes." Victoria's thumb traced circles on his palm. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for this to fall apart. I've never had something this good before." "Neither have I, not since Emily." Jack shifted to face her fully. "But I'm learning that waiting for disaster is just another way of not being present, of not enjoying what we have right now." "When did you get so wise?" "Somewhere between teaching CPR to teenagers and learning how to braid hair for the school art show." Jack smiled. "Lily's art show is next week, by the way. Thursday at 6. She wants you there." "I wouldn't miss it for anything. What's she showing?" "A whole series of watercolors. The botanical gardens, the museum, the greenhouse. She calls it places that feel like home." His voice caught. "She painted us, Victoria, the three of us in the greenhouse. It's beautiful." Victoria's eyes went bright. "I want to see it. I want to buy it." "She'd probably just give it to you. She made it for you." "Then I'll treasure it forever." They sat by the fire until late, talking about everything and nothing, comfortable in the silences, easy in their affection. When Jack finally stood to leave, Victoria walked him to the door. "Stay," she said quietly. "Both of you. It's late, and Lily's already asleep upstairs. You can take the guest room next to hers." Jack hesitated. They'd been careful about propriety, about keeping things appropriate for Lily, about not moving too fast. But looking at Victoria's open, hopeful expression, he realized they'd already crossed most of those boundaries. Lily already considered Victoria family. They already functioned as a unit, making decisions together, building a life together. "Okay," he said, "we'll stay." The next morning, Jack woke to the smell of coffee and pancakes. He found Victoria and Lily in the kitchen, both still in pajamas, making breakfast together. Lily was narrating the proper pancake flipping technique, while Victoria listened with exaggerated seriousness, and the scene was so domestic, so perfectly normal, that Jack had to pause in the doorway to take it in. This was what happiness looked like. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but Sunday morning pancakes and bedhead and the sound of his daughter's laughter filling a kitchen. "Daddy!" Lily spotted him. "Miss Victoria is teaching me how to make fancy pancakes. Look, this one's shaped like a heart." "I see that. Very impressive." Jack crossed to the coffee pot, and Victoria handed him a mug without being asked, their movements synchronized from months of Friday dinners. "I was thinking," Victoria said as they ate, that we should make this a regular thing. Sunday breakfast here, if you're interested. It would give me an excuse to actually use this kitchen. Can we, Daddy? Please? Lily's eyes were wide with hope. Jack looked at Victoria, at the casual intimacy of the moment, at the future she was offering. Yeah, I think that sounds perfect. So Sunday breakfast became part of their routine. Jack and Lily would take the train to Beacon Hill, and they'd cook together in Victoria's enormous kitchen, then spend the day exploring the city or just reading in the library. It felt like playing house, except it wasn't play, it was real life, messy and beautiful in theirs. Lily's art show arrived on a Thursday that felt like spring pretending to be winter. The school gymnasium had been transformed into a gallery, with student artwork displayed on temporary walls, proud parents milling about with plastic cups of punch. Jack found Lily's section and stopped, his breath catching. She'd painted 12 watercolors, each one a location from their life over the past few months. The Botanical Gardens with its glass ceiling, the Museum of Fine Arts grand entrance, Victoria's greenhouse, orchids blooming in shades of purple and white, their apartment's small kitchen, the common in autumn. And in the center, the piece she'd told him about, the three of them standing in the greenhouse, Lily's artistic style making them look like they belonged in a storybook, surrounded by flowers and light. Victoria arrived while Jack was still staring at the paintings. She came to stand beside him, and when she saw the greenhouse painting, her hand went to her mouth. Jack, she whispered, it's beautiful. She calls it my family, Jack said, pointing to the small placard beneath it. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. May I buy it? I know she's young, but this deserves to be properly valued. I'll pay whatever the suggested donation is. The suggested donation is $5. Then I'll give $500 for the art program. Lily appeared, nervous and excited, wearing her favorite dress and clutching a program. Did you see them? Do you like them? Victoria crouched down, heedless of her expensive suit and the gym floor. Lily, they're extraordinary. You're an artist, a real artist. Really? Really. And I'd like to buy the greenhouse painting, if you're willing to sell it. I want to hang it in my house so I can see it every day. Lily's face lit up like the sun. You can just have it. It's for you anyway. Then I'll donate to the art program in your name. How's that? That's perfect. Lily hugged Victoria, then grabbed both their hands. Come on, I want to show you everyone else's art too. They spent an hour at the show, admiring other students' work, talking to Lily's teacher, a kind woman who pulled Jack aside to tell him how talented his daughter was, how she should consider applying to specialized art programs. Jack felt proud enough to burst. Afterward, they went to dinner at Stella's, where Mrs. Rossetti made a huge fuss over Lily's artistic achievement and brought out a special dessert with a sparkler. Lily basked in the attention, telling Mrs. Rossetti in elaborate detail about each painting, about her techniques, about her plans for future projects. Walking back to Jack's apartment that night, Lily between them holding both their hands, Jack felt something shift inside him. The last pieces of his fear, the final walls he'd built around his heart, finally crumbled. He'd spent 4 years protecting himself and Lily, keeping their world small and safe. But this? Walking through Boston with the two people he loved most, Lily chattering about art and orchids and what they should cook for Sunday breakfast, this was better than safe. This was alive. April brought warmer weather and new challenges. The Foundation's board voted to expand the emergency response program nationally, which meant Jack would need to hire and train additional instructors, develop curriculum for different regions, travel occasionally to set up new programs. It was exciting and overwhelming in equal measure. I can't do this alone, Jack told Victoria one evening in his office, surrounded by expansion plans and budget spreadsheets. You won't be alone. I'll help. Margaret will help. We'll hire support staff. Victoria came around the desk to stand beside him. This is good news, Jack. Your program is so successful they want to replicate it everywhere. You should be celebrating. I am. What if I can't do it? What if I'm not ready for this kind of responsibility? Victoria turned his chair to face her. You saved my life with seconds to spare. You rebuilt your entire life in a new city while raising a daughter alone. You created a program from scratch that's already saved lives. You stood in front of my foundation's board and convinced them to invest $500,000 in your vision. She cupped his face in her hands. Jack Dalton,
You are ready for anything. You just have to trust yourself the way I trust you. Jack pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. What did I do to deserve you? You breathed life into a dying woman and then stayed around long enough for her to fall in love with you. Victoria smiled. Pretty solid strategy, actually. Worked out well for both of us. Yeah, it really did. They hired 3 new instructors by June, all former EMTs or paramedics with teaching experience. Jack trained them personally, sharing his curriculum, his teaching methods, his philosophy that emergency response training should be accessible to everyone, regardless of income or education level. Watching his program grow beyond what he could manage alone filled Jack with a pride he hadn't felt since his EMT days. In July, Lily turned 11. Victoria helped Jack plan a party in the botanical gardens, pulling strings to reserve a private section for the afternoon. Lily invited her whole art class, and they spent hours wandering through the gardens, sketching flowers, playing games Victoria had organized. The cake was enormous, decorated with edible flowers, and when Lily blew out the candles, she wished out loud that things could stay this perfect forever.
What if they could? Victoria asked Jack later, after the guests had left and they were cleaning up.
Lily was showing her friend's parents around the greenhouse, her voice carrying through the glass walls. What do you mean? Victoria set down the paper plates she'd been collecting. I mean, what if we made this permanent? You and Lily move in with me. We stop splitting our time between 2 places and just be together. Fully. Officially. Jack's heart hammered against his ribs. Victoria, I know it's fast. I know we've only been together 7 months. But Jack, I'm 37 years old. I'm not interested in playing it safe or following timelines that don't make sense for us. I love you. I love Lily. I want to wake up with you every morning and go to sleep beside you every night. I want Sunday breakfasts and Friday dinners and every day in between. She stepped closer. I want us to be a family. Really, truly, permanently. Plus, Jack thought about his apartment in Dorchester, about the life he'd built there through sheer determination and will. It had been enough when enough was all he could manage. But Victoria was offering more than enough. She was offering abundance. I need to talk to Lily first, he said. This affects her too. She should have a say. Of course, talk to her, think about it. Take whatever time you need. Victoria paused. But Jack? I'm all in. Whenever you're ready, I'm here. That night, after they got home, Jack sat on Lily's bed while she changed into pajamas. Best birthday ever? He asked. Best birthday ever, Lily confirmed. Ms. Victoria is really good at parties. She's good at a lot of things. Jack took a breath. Bug, I need to ask you something important. Victoria wants us to move in with her, to live in her house in Beacon Hill, to be a family all the time, not just on weekends. What do you think about that? Lily stopped mid-brush stroke, her hair half brushed. Really? We'd live there? In the big house? With the greenhouse? If you want to. But only if you want to. This is your decision, too. Lily set down her brush and climbed onto the bed beside him. Would I have to change schools? No. We'd keep you in the same school. We'd just have a different commute. Would I get to have the room with the window seat? The one I slept in that time? I'm sure Victoria would let you have whichever room you wanted. Lily was quiet, thinking. Then she said, Would this mean Ms. Victoria is like my mom? Not my real mom, but my other mom? Jack's throat tightened. I think it would mean she's your family, what you call her, what role she has in your life. That's something you and Victoria would figure out together. But yeah, she'd be there every day, taking care of you, loving you, being part of our lives. I'd like that, Lily said simply. I love Ms. Victoria, and I think Mom would be happy that we're not alone anymore, that we have someone who loves us. You're sure? Because we don't have to rush this, Daddy. Lily put her small hand on his. I'm sure. Let's move in with Ms. Victoria. Let's be a real family. Jack pulled his daughter close, overwhelmed by her certainty, her capacity for love, her willingness to embrace change. Okay, Bug, we'll tell her tomorrow. They told Victoria over Sunday breakfast, and her joy was incandescent. She immediately started making plans. Which rooms would be Lily's, where they'd put Jack's books, how they'd arrange the furniture. Her excitement was infectious, and soon all 3 of them were talking over each other, planning their new life. They moved in August, when the city sweltered and the work of packing seemed impossible. But Victoria hired movers, and Margaret coordinated everything, and within a week, Jack's modest apartment in Dorchester was empty, and their lives had expanded to fill Victoria's beautiful house. Lily's new room had the window seat she'd wanted, overlooking the garden. Jack's books lined the library shelves alongside Victoria's. Their clothes hung in the same closet. In the mornings, they'd have coffee in the greenhouse. In the evenings, they'd cook dinner together in the kitchen. It felt like they'd been living this way forever, like the months of splitting time between two places had been the aberration, and this was simply how life was meant to be. One evening in September, Jack was teaching a class at a community center in Roxbury when a young man in the back raised his hand. "Mr. Dalton, I just want to say, I saw you on the news last year. The whole thing with Miss Hale and her uncle, I thought it was just rich people drama, you know? But then I saw you speak at that press conference, and you said something that stuck with me. You said the truth matters, that we should care about doing right by people, not just scoring points." The young man paused. "That's why I'm here. I want to learn how to help people. You made me believe it was possible." After class, Jack sat in his car for a long time processing. His private crisis, the photos, the scandal, the press conference, had reached people he'd never met, had inspired them to action. The ripple effects just kept expanding. He drove home to Beacon Hill, to the house with the greenhouse and the orchids and the two people who'd become his entire world. Victoria was reading in the library, and Lily was upstairs doing homework. It was a perfectly ordinary evening in a life that had become extraordinarily full. "How was class?" Victoria asked, setting down her book. "Good. Great, actually." Jack told her about the young man's comment, about the unexpected impact of their story. "That's what happens when you live with integrity," Victoria said. "People notice. They're inspired. They want to be better." She smiled. "You're changing lives, Jack, not just through your teaching, but through your example." "We're changing lives. Together." "Together," Victoria agreed. In October, on a Sunday morning that smelled like fallen leaves and possibility, Jack found Victoria in the greenhouse, tending her mother's orchids. Lily was still asleep, the house quiet except for the sound of water on leaves. "I have something for you," Jack said. Victoria turned, curious. Jack held out a small velvet box. "Jack, before you say anything, I need to tell you something. When I lost Emily, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd used up my chance at love, at happiness, at building something meaningful. I moved to Boston because I needed to survive, and survival meant making myself small." He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring. "But then I picked you up one night, and you stopped breathing, and I remembered what it felt like to fight for something, to refuse to give up, to believe that miracles are possible if you're willing to work for them." Victoria's hands went to her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. "You gave me my life back, Victoria. You gave Lily a family. You gave us both a future I never let myself imagine." Jack took the ring from the box. "I know we've only been together a year. I know by conventional standards this is too fast. But I've learned that conventional standards don't apply to us. So I'm asking you, Victoria Hale, will you marry me?" "Yes," Victoria said immediately. No hesitation, no doubt. "Yes, absolutely yes." Jack slipped the ring on her finger, and Victoria threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. They stood there in the greenhouse surrounded by orchids, holding each other like they could make time stop, make this moment last forever. "Should we wake Lily?" Victoria asked finally. "Let's surprise her at breakfast. Make pancakes and tell her together. She's going to lose her mind. She's been asking me for months when you were going to propose." Jack laughed. "She knew before I did? She knows everything. Haven't you figured that out by now?" They made pancakes together, an elaborate stack of them, and when Lily stumbled into the kitchen, still half asleep, Victoria held out her left hand. "Lily, sweetie, we have news." Lily saw the ring and screamed, actually screamed, a sound of pure joy that probably woke the neighbors. She launched herself at both of them, and they stood in a three-way hug in the middle of the kitchen, Lily babbling about weddings and flowers and how she knew this would happen, and could she please be the flower girl. "You can be whatever you want to be," Victoria said, kissing the top of her head. "This is your family too." "Can I call you Mom?" Lily asked, her voice suddenly small. "Not instead of my real mom, but just Because you're my mom now too? Victoria's eyes met Jack's over Lily's head, asking permission. Jack nodded, his own eyes wet. I would be honored, Victoria whispered. So honored. They got married in December, a small ceremony in the greenhouse surrounded by orchids and the people they loved most. Lily wore a white dress with flowers in her hair and carried a basket of petals. Mrs. Rossetti attended, crying happy tears and declaring it the most beautiful wedding she'd ever seen. Margaret served as Victoria's maid of honor, and Emily's mother came from Chicago to give Jack her blessing in person. Emily would have loved her, she told Jack before the ceremony. She would have been so happy that you found someone to love again, that Lily has a mother. She'll never replace Emily. She's not supposed to. She's Victoria, and that's exactly what you both need. The ceremony was simple. They wrote their own vows. Victoria promised to love Jack and Lily, to build a life worthy of the second chance they'd been given, to honor the courage it took for Jack to open his heart again. Jack promised to love Victoria with the same certainty he'd shown that night in the car, to fight for their happiness with the same determination he'd shown in saving her life, to choose her every day for the rest of their days. When they kissed, Lily cheered, and everyone laughed, and the greenhouse filled with applause. At the reception, dinner at Stella's with their small group of loved ones, Lily stood up and clinked her glass. I want to make a toast, she announced with the seriousness of someone twice her age, to my dad, who's the bravest person I know, and to my mom Victoria, who loves us exactly right, and to second chances and new families and all the beautiful things that happen when you're brave enough to let people in. She raised her glass of sparkling cider. To us, everyone echoed. Months turned into years. Jack's emergency response program expanded to 15 cities, training thousands of people who would go on to save countless lives. Victoria's foundation flourished under her leadership, investing in programs that made real, measurable differences in people's lives. Together, they established the Emily Dalton Memorial Scholarship for single parents pursuing careers in emergency medicine, ensuring that Emily's memory lived on in tangible, meaningful ways. Lily grew up in the house with the greenhouse, surrounded by orchids and love, and two parents who showed her daily what it meant to be brave, to be kind, to choose hope over fear. She became an accomplished artist, her paintings of flowers and families hanging in galleries across Boston. She never forgot her first mother, the woman who'd given her life and love in 4 precious years. But she also claimed Victoria fully, unapologetically, as the mother who'd chosen her, who'd built a family from broken pieces and refused to let them stay broken. On the 5th anniversary of the night Jack saved Victoria's life, they returned to the spot where it happened, the quiet side street where he'd pulled over, where he'd breathed life into her lungs, where everything had changed. They stood there in the darkness, holding hands, remembering. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I died that night? Victoria asked. Sometimes, Jack admitted, but I try not to. Because you didn't die. And everything that came after, all of this, all of us, it happened because I didn't give up. Because I kept breathing for you until you could breathe on your own. You're still doing that, you know, still breathing life into me every single day. Jack pulled her close. You do the same for me, for both of us. They drove home together through the city they'd both come to love, past the common and the gardens and the museum, past all the places that had become part of their story. At home, Lily was waiting, now 16 and beautiful and whole, working on a new painting for her college portfolio. How was your date? She asked, not looking up from her canvas. Perfect, Victoria said. We went back to where it all started. The night Dad saved your life? The night we saved each other. Lily set down her brush and studied them. Her father, who'd learned to love again despite his fear, and her mother, who'd shown them both that broken things could be made beautiful. I'm working on something for you two, for your anniversary. Want to see? She turned the canvas. It showed the 3 of them standing in front of a small house surrounded by flowers, almost identical to a drawing she'd made years ago. But this version was more refined, more mature, painted with the skill she'd developed over years of practice and love. At the bottom she'd written, "The breath that changed everything." Jack felt his eyes burn. Lily, it's beautiful. It's the truth. That one breath, the one you gave Mom Victoria that night, it didn't just save her life, It gave us all a new one, a better one. A life none of us would have had if you hadn't been brave enough to act when it mattered most. Victoria wrapped her arms around Lily from behind, resting her chin on her daughter's shoulder. "Your father is the bravest man I know." "I learned it from you two," Jack said. "Bravery isn't about not being afraid. It's about loving people anyway, about building a life anyway, about choosing hope when despair seems easier." That night, after Lily went to bed, Jack and Victoria sat in the greenhouse like they did most nights, surrounded by orchids that bloomed in defiance of winter, proof that beautiful things could survive and thrive in unlikely conditions. "Do you remember what you asked me that first day in the hospital?" Jack said. "You asked what I wanted." "I remember. You said nothing. You said you were just glad I was all right." "I didn't know how to want things then. I'd spent so long just surviving that I'd forgotten how to live." Jack took Victoria's hand. "But if you asked me now, I'd have an answer. I want this, every day of this. Sunday breakfasts and Friday dinners, and Lily's art shows and your orchids and the work we do and the life we've built. I want to keep choosing you, keep choosing us, for as long as I'm breathing." "Then that's what we'll do," Victoria said simply. "We'll keep choosing each other, keep choosing love, keep choosing to be brave." Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing Boston in white. Inside the greenhouse, orchids bloomed in shades of purple and pink and white, delicate and resilient, thriving in the warmth of careful tending and unconditional love. Jack thought about that September night 5 years ago, about the weight of Victoria's body in his arms, about the desperate calculation of breaths and compressions, about the moment her chest had risen on its own and he'd known she would live. He'd thought he was saving a stranger. He hadn't known he was saving his future, but that's how grace works. You do the right thing in a moment of crisis, and it ripples forward in ways you can't predict. One breath becomes a heartbeat, becomes a conversation, becomes a friendship, becomes a family, becomes a life so full and beautiful you can barely remember what it was like to be empty. Jack Dalton had learned to make himself invisible, but Victoria Hale had seen him anyway. She'd seen through his fear and his grief and his carefully constructed walls to the man underneath, the man who saved lives, who loved fiercely, who was capable of building something extraordinary if he could just find the courage to try. And he had tried. They both had. Together they'd built a family from broken pieces and second chances. They'd turned a moment of crisis into a lifetime of love. They'd proven that endings could become beginnings if you were willing to take the risk, to open your heart, to breathe life into hope, even when hope seemed impossible. In the greenhouse, surrounded by flowers and love and the woman who'd changed everything, Jack closed his eyes and breathed deep. The air smelled like orchids and soil and possibility. It smelled like home. And for the first time since Emily died, Jack Dalton felt complete. Not because the past had been erased or forgotten, but because the present was so full of love that it left room for grief and joy to coexist, room for memory and hope to sit side by side, room for one breath to change everything. Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. Upstairs, Lily slept peacefully in her room with the window seat. The city stretched out beyond their walls, full of people who'd been trained to save lives, carrying forward the work Jack and Victoria had started together. And in that moment, in that greenhouse, in that life they'd built from courage and love and one desperate breath on a dark street, everything was exactly as it should be. Everything was home.